On December 1, 2014, 47-year-old Ibolya Ryan, a mother of 3, had been looking forward to spending the upcoming holiday season with her children. Sadly, someone ended her plans, and she never got to enjoy her favorite time of year with her loved ones. 3 days after her murder, on December 4, 2014, the Abu Dhabi Police Department put an end to their tireless efforts of investigating the merciless homicide when they made an arrest in the city. What came to light after the arrest forced the authorities to be on high alert once again, as an unforeseeable motive was uncovered, and it became more and more evident that this case wasn't as simple as it seemed. Who was this woman that Abu Dhabi police had taken into custody? What could she have done that put the investigators in a race against time? The woman who was arrested was 38-year-old Ala Badr Abdullah al-Hashemi. She was a Yemeni-born woman living in the United Arab Emirates with her husband Mohammed al-Habashi al-Hashemi and their 6 children. Allah's eldest child was 10 years old, while her youngest was merely 10 months old when she decided to commit an awful deed. All her kids, young and innocent, were unaware of the wicked schemes that went on inside their mother's head. On Monday, December 1, 2014, Allah set out to bring her plans into action. She put her black gloves on and covered her face with a veiled niqabi, a usually black garment worn by Muslim women to cover their face as part of an interpretation of hijab. Leaving her house just a little before 1 p.m. that same day, Allah headed to the famous boutique mall, which was located on Al Reem Island in Abu Dhabi. Despite knowing that the mall was equipped with fully functioning CCTV cameras and that she was being watched by the security, Allah was completely unbothered. She wouldn't turn back or leave the mall without doing what she had to do. Allah entered the mall around 1:13 p.m. and took the elevator. Upon exiting the elevator, Allah spoke briefly to a security guard and then headed towards the mall's washroom, where she encountered a 47-year-old woman named Ibolya Ryan. Allah waited for a while, and when Ibolya was alone, Allah struck with full force and stabbed her to death. Moments later, after exiting the washroom, Allah rushed to the lobby once again and hurriedly got into the elevator. It didn't take long for the crowd in the mall to notice what had happened inside the washroom, and as they emerged in the lobby in a state of panic, still processing the gruesome murder that had just taken place, Allah escaped the building. And even though the security at Boutique Mall was usually tight, Allah managed to slip through the hands of the guards. Luckily, all her movements had been captured by the security footage. The mall security informed the Abu Dhabi Police Department of the tragic incident, and as the detectives arrived at the scene, an investigation was launched into the murder. Ibolya Ryan was a Hungarian-American kindergarten teacher who was originally born and brought up in Romania. In 2006, she and her husband Paul Ryan relocated to Sopron, Hungary, along with their daughter Timea and twin sons Adam and Aiden, before subsequently undergoing a divorce. After she had separated from her husband, Ibolya went wherever her work took her. Over the course of the next few years, Ibolya had a diverse teaching career which spanned 4 countries, including the United States, and with Abu Dhabi being her last stop. She had been residing in Abu Dhabi for almost a year, and apart from being a teacher there, she also fulfilled the duties of being a devoted mother to her 11-year-old twin sons who lived with her in their Abu Dhabi home. At the time, Ibolya's 13-year-old daughter Timea was living with her father Paul, Ibolya's ex-husband, in Vienna, Austria. Ibolya had devoted herself to the realm of education in the United Arab Emirates, and even though she was in a strange land away from home, she settled in quite well. Beyond the conventional scope of her teaching responsibilities, she also undertook the role of mentoring fellow teachers, contributing significantly to the professional growth of her peers. It was also evident through her actions that her main focus was to lead her students toward a better future, and she was widely recognized for her resolute dedication to her profession. Ibolya embodied a sense of purity in this world, serving as a beacon of kindness and compassion. She lived with a profound sense of purpose, consistently striving to create a positive impact and contribute to the betterment of the lives she touched. On December 1, 2014, as the holiday season was approaching, Ibolya had planned to go shopping at the boutique mall and then head home to her twins. But little did she know that fate had different plans for her. During the initial stages of the investigation, authorities faced considerable difficulty in ascertaining the identity of the suspect, who remained completely concealed from head to toe. This also led them to consider the possibility that the perpetrator might be a male masquerading in disguise. A couple of days after the tragic murder of Ibolya, specifically on December 3, 2014, Abu Dhabi police issued a public statement indicating that efforts were still underway to determine the identity and gender of the suspect. And although there were many people who saw the killer, none of them could provide any distinctive details, such as facial features or build about the suspect, because of the fully enveloping attire, consisting of an abaya, black gloves, and a face cover. The Abu Dhabi Security Media Department further shared more information by uploading a video on its official YouTube channel. This footage, featuring CCTV recordings, portrayed the killer labeled as the Reem Island Ghost. The video showcased the reactions of the people present at the scene during the heinous act. Notably, a mother accompanied by a young child was observed hastily ushering the child away, while security personnel approached the corridor in response to the unfolding events. The footage showed heightened awareness around onlookers, with particular attention drawn to activities in the restroom area. The surveillance footage, serving as a critical piece of evidence, also captured the cloaked suspect subsequently picking up a newspaper, probably to conceal the weapon, and then proceeding in the direction of the restroom. Approximately 90 minutes later, the individual suspected of the assault hastily re-emerged into the lobby, prompting disarray among shoppers who swiftly dispersed. In the midst of the chaotic scene, the alleged attacker dismissed the efforts of a woman attempting to interfere with her. As a security guard made his way towards the restrooms, the suspect rushed into the elevator and ultimately fled the scene after the crime occurred. The tape concluded by revealing a distressing visual. A trail of bloody footprints originating from one of the restroom stalls gave a glimpse of the violent and gruesome nature of the crime. Law enforcement officials reported that the unfortunate victim, Ibolya, met a tragic end through fatal stabbing. Detectives also discovered a kitchen knife at the crime scene and confirmed that it was the murder weapon. Questioning the witnesses, the detectives learned that prior to the murder, the two women had also gotten into a heated argument. But it wasn't clear to any of the detectives whether the attack on Ibolya was planned or was it just the result of an overly heated argument. The surveillance footage, as well as the official police reports, provided a detailed account of the suspect. Following the commission of the initial crime, the niqabi suspect was seen returning to her vehicle and eventually exiting the scene. Shockingly, detectives learned that the suspect had then proceeded to a residential building situated in the Abu Dhabi Corniche, where once again, an unsettling sequence of events unfolded. The security cameras at this location captured the suspect's movement and showed her walking into the building holding a small black suitcase. She proceeded toward the apartment of a 46-year-old Egyptian-American doctor who was only identified as MH. The doctor lived there with his wife and 3 kids. She left the suitcase near their residence and exited the building. Compellingly, the police video revealed more details about the suspect. In the video, detectives were able to see the presence of blood on the suspect's steering wheel and the black suitcase, identical to the one she allegedly carried to the doctor's apartment. This chilling visual evidence added another layer of complexity to the unfolding narrative, highlighting the gravity of the suspect's actions as she went from one crime scene to the next. Fortunately, the doctor's son spotted the suitcase in the evening while going to the mosque to pray. He saw something strange in front of the house and told his family. They called a security guard for help, and he contacted the police. The police were able to confirm that it was a bomb and defuse it just in time before it could explode. The security guard mentioned that a woman with gloves had come to the house just minutes before the incident. She was dragging a black suitcase. He added that she went to the floor where the doctor's family lived and a few minutes later quickly left the building. According to detectives, the homemade bomb was made using basic materials which were easily available in the market. The bomb was made up of a small gas cylinder, a lighter, glue, and nails meant to cause severe injuries when the bomb went off. While the detectives kept the investigation going to identify the killer, they kept their progress and measures under wraps, not sharing many details about the case. On the morning of Thursday, December 4, 2014, Abu Dhabi police caught the person responsible for the crime. The killer was identified as 38-year-old Ala Badir Abdullah al-Hashemi, General Sheikh Sef bin Zayed al-Nahyan, who is Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Interior in the UAE, shared that the security and police forces had arrested the suspected woman known as Nikibi for brutally killing the American teacher Ibolya Ryan. He highlighted that they identified the suspect in less than 24 hours and arrested her in less than 48 hours. However, the detectives refused to disclose how they successfully identified Allah. Going through Allah's internet search history, it was evident that Allah had become extreme in her beliefs because of the things she saw on the internet and the people she followed. She didn't have a specific plan to hurt a particular American person, but she wanted to hurt someone from another country at random. Allah was quite blunt when she stated the reason behind the attacks and didn't try to hide any details. Allah admitted that she chose Ibolya and the doctor simply because they were American. Furthermore, Allah told the detectives in charge of the case that she committed those horrible acts because her husband, Mohammed al-Habashi al-Hashemi, was taken by the police for questioning on the suspicion that he might be connected to terrorist groups. She wanted to get back at the police force for taking her husband and make foreigners, especially Americans, British, and French people living in the country, scared for their safety. These terrible incidents happened after there were other attacks on people from Western countries and Saudi Arabia. Many people around the world heard about these attacks, and it made the international security and business communities worried. Additionally, just a few weeks from Ibolya's stabbing, there had been warnings from U.S. embassies in the area because some websites were encouraging attacks specifically on American teachers. Abu Dhabi was mostly considered a safe place for people from other countries to work, and the security there was very strict when it came to terrorism. However, in light of these events, people from other countries living in Abu Dhabi began to grow fearful regarding the increasing crime rate against international citizens. The government in the Emirates said that Ibolya's killing was a terrorist attack done by one person who had been influenced by online terrorist beliefs. The police clarified that Allah didn't know either of her victims. She carried out those attacks only because of the nationality of the victims and not because of any personal problems. This made the people who live in Abu Dhabi, both citizens and those from other countries, feel uneasy because terrorist attacks almost never happen in the United Arab Emirates. Detectives uncovered another threatening detail about Ibolya's murder when they came across a statement made in September 2014 by Abu Muhammad al-Adani, who spoke for the group calling itself the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. In the statement, Abu Muhammad al-Adani urged the Muslim community to harm Westerners and people from any other country involved in the attacks on their group. His exact words were, "Hurt them in any way you can." The attacks that followed this threatening statement were seen as part of a pattern of violent acts inspired by ideas instead of a direct order from militant groups. Other examples included the 2014 ramming attack in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, the beheading of a French tourist named Hervé Gordel in Algeria, and other attacks on people from Denmark and the United States and Saudi Arabia. Events of terrorism were not taken lightly by the officials in Abu Dhabi. A good chunk of the city's functioning relied on the work of many people from other countries and on tourism to keep its economy going. To make sure that the violence remained isolated, security authorities sent out a strong message to any other potential terrorists in the UAE, warning them of the dangerous outcomes of any attacks they might be planning. A security official in the UAE, who wasn't named, shared with an Emirates news agency called WAM that just before the attack, Allah had been surfing through terrorist websites on the internet. And it was through these websites that she learned how to make explosives and carry out a murder. The detectives were also keen on exploring the possibility that Allah was not working alone. The police talked to ABC News and said they arrested some other people at Allah's house, but they weren't certain whether these people were involved in the attack or not. Allah told the investigators that her husband, Mohammed al-Habashi al-Hashemi, used to support militant groups. He made her watch and listen to recordings of leaders from groups like Osama bin Laden. Her house was said to be like a base of operations, but it wasn't clear if she was part of any groups. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that Allah was also found guilty of using an online account to share information that mocked and harmed the country. As the news channels covered the report of Allah's arrest, it was revealed that she was also convicted of sending money to Al-Qaeda, a terrorist organization in Yemen, knowing that it would be used to support terrorist activities. On June 29, 2015, before announcing the verdict, Judge Fallah al-Hajeri said that the UAE, with Allah's blessings, had been and always will continue to be a safe and stable place. It's an example of people living together in peace and harmony. He mentioned that in recent years, some new criminal methods not seen before in the UAE have been used to scare and hurt people. The goal was to disrupt the country's system and put society in danger by doing harmful things. When there was a threat to the overall stability of the nation, it was important to review and deal with these actions in the strictest way possible. That's why the new anti-terror law was achieved to fight against terrorism and get rid of it. The judge ordered the law enforcement to confiscate all the evidence in Allah's case and to shut down the online account Allah had been using to communicate with terrorist organizations. Later, on June 29, 2015, the Federal Supreme Court in Abu Dhabi sentenced 38-year-old Emirati woman Ala Badir al-Hashemi to death for committing the murder of 47-year-old Ibolya Ryan. Since the ruling was made by the Supreme Court, it could not be appealed. Hence, Ala's fate had been decided. During her trial, Ala requested the court to provide her with psychological help. She said that she had been having strange visions and saw ghost-like people. The court took this into consideration and called for psychiatric tests to be done on Ala. However, the results showed that Ala was well aware of what she did, and her mental state didn't seem to affect her actions when she carried them out. When the court declared the verdict and sentence, Ala, surrounded by 4 police officers, didn't show any emotion. After leaving the court, she smiled and waved at her father and brother. On July 13, 2015, a Monday morning, Ahmed al-Dahani, Attorney General for the State Security Prosecution, announced that the ruling of the State Security Circuit of the Federal Supreme Court No. 73 of 2015 on the execution of Ala Badir Abdullah had been carried out, following the approval of President Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan. However, the officials didn't disclose how Ala was executed. Members of the expatriate community in Dubai held a candlelight vigil in memory of Ibolya Ryan and shared how her tragic death had impacted them.
I don't feel on edge. We've lived here for 7.5 years, and I've never felt anything but safe anywhere I've been, day or night, and I really do still feel the same way. When it happened, before they knew anything about the cause or why, I still didn't feel like someone was out to get me or necessarily Americans. Anything can happen anywhere in any city in the world, and I've always felt very comfortable in Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
I really enjoy the open-minded society here. I really enjoy what opportunities people have here, regardless from where they come. And that is one of the aspects that I don't know what motivation is behind this mishappening, this disgusting deed, but it feels like somebody wants to destroy this, and I'm very, very happy that this is not that easy in this country.
The process of closure for Ibolya's family, friends, and the teaching community was difficult. Paul Ryan, Ibolya's former husband with whom she had 3 children, shared his views on the verdict as well.
Well, obviously, I'm totally horrified by what happened. One just needs to look at the video, the images of that bathroom, and it knocks you out. Knocks you out. I still hope my children have not seen that. Those beautiful children I have, making sure that they get the comfort and the sense of their mother and their future, that I protect them from as best I can.
There's a suspect in custody. What's your initial feeling? Was this a person operating as a lone wolf or part of a much grander agenda that we don't see yet?
She is thought of as a lone wolf. As an American, I could easily view that with some skepticism. And actually, along the way, initially my thought, well, why couldn't it be part of a terrorist cell? We've had terrorist cells in a number of places, even in the West. Why couldn't it exist here? There might be a cell involved, certainly, but after seeing the video of how she was captured and what was in her car, she had everything there, all for herself, ready to go. She didn't even care about the blood prints on her steering wheel. She could easily have done this all by herself.
A recruitment firm that helped bring Paul Ryan to Abu Dhabi started a fundraising campaign so he could take her body back home and support their children's education. After a few weeks, the Ryan family took over the fund and utilized it to help Ryan's family in Romania. General Sheikh Sef talked about Ibolya's murder as something that went against the important values the UAE believed in. These values came from the teachings of Islam and the true Arab heritage. He mentioned that the UAE strongly supported these good values, whether it was within the country or in other places. He also shared how sad he felt to see such crimes happening in a country known for its safety and security. Later in 2015, Allah's husband, Mohammed al-Habashi al-Hashemi, faced serious charges for supposedly planning to bomb tourist places and harm a local leader in December of that same year. The name of the leader Mohammed had planned to assassinate wasn't revealed. During a court hearing at the Federal Supreme Court, Mohammed persisted that he was innocent and said he didn't do any of the things he was accused of. Mohammed was being represented by two lawyers. One was chosen by the government and the other was chosen by his family. Both lawyers dodged reporters when asked to make a comment on Mohammed's situation. Mohammed was accused of 7 things, including planning to bomb the Yas Marina Formula One racetrack and a nearby IKEA in the capital. He also supposedly planned to attack tourists and an American military base. Police also found evidence linking Mohammed to terrorist organizations Al-Qaeda and ISIS. His case was adjourned until January 18, 2016. But since it didn't receive enough media coverage, the public couldn't find out how the court proceedings went and what the verdict was. Do you think if it hadn't been for the detectives' quick actions leading to Allah's timely arrest, Allah would have committed even more terrorist acts? During her trial, Allah didn't have any form of guilt or remorse for her actions. Do you think this was because she had been brainwashed by terrorist groups?
Hey, police, Trooper Fry.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you, ma'am?
I don't know. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me? Why? What are you going to kill me? Kill me? Why are you going to...
Suffolk Police 875. What is the location of your emergency?
43 the Bayou. Some woman is knocking at my door. She says she's in danger.
The officer located a body.
It seemed to be wrapped in burlap, which didn't make any sense. The crime scene gets expanded. I'm called, and Chief, we found another set of remains. They find another one, and another one. We were dealing with a serial killer.
This lady, Shannan Gilbert, was just 23 years old in May 2010 when all the strange events started. Born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on October 25, 1986, Shannan and her 3 younger sisters, Sherry, Sarah, and Stevie, didn't have it easy from the start. Their mom, Mari, in 1999, whisked her daughters away to New York after splitting from her husband due to his heroin use. After that, Shannan and her sisters never laid eyes on their dad again. Shannan was a bit of a firecracker since she was a child, but her mom found some of her behaviors a real challenge. Shannan had these intense mood swings and even got into binging and purging habits. These were things that really needed a doctor or a therapist. But Shannan's mom felt overwhelmed and ended up placing her in foster care instead of seeking the right help for her. Getting sent to foster care really messed with Shannan when she was a kid. She kept trying to sneak back home, but she always ended up getting to whatever foster home she was in at the time. Her mom, Mari, never really explained things clearly, so she always said it was Shannan who wanted to be independent and chose not to live with the family. But here's where things got tricky. When Shannan was 12, she got hit with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. This unexpected news came at a time when Shannan really needed love and support from her family. But unfortunately, she faced isolation. So, during this tough time, she started experimenting with various drugs. and started drinking alcohol instead of sticking to the medication prescribed for her bipolar disorder. However, despite these struggles, she was super bright and managed to graduate early at only 16 years old. After that, she hustled and worked at various jobs to put herself through nursing school, and her grandma kindly let her crash at her place during this period. But after a year in nursing school, Shannan felt it was a snooze fest and bailed in 2009 because she was chasing her true dream of becoming a singer. While living in New Jersey in 2010, she decided to jump into working for an escort agency to make quick cash. This was all part of her plan to make a lot of money swiftly, aiming to hit the big time someday. This is when she crossed paths with a guy named Alex Diaz, who became not just Shannan's driver, but her boyfriend too. However, during this phase, Shannan got caught up in a tough situation, struggling with a serious addiction to cocaine, ecstasy, and alcohol. In addition, she faced multiple pregnancies she didn't want, so she opted to terminate them in order to keep up with her work. Now, at some point, the relationship went totally off the rails when Shannan and Alex, both deep into substances, began clashing even more fiercely during their arguments. In one particularly rough instance, Alex ended up hitting Shannan in the face, which ultimately broke her jaw. It was severe enough that she had to rush to the hospital, and the injury required immediate surgery to insert a titanium plate to fix her jaw. But despite the terrible situation with Alex, Shannan chose to remain by his side. This time, instead of continuing her work with the escort company, she took a different path and started placing her own ads on Craigslist to skip the middleman and increase her savings. On top of that, she took the initiative to enroll in online courses and regularly attended singing classes and auditions in Manhattan, pursuing her dream. But throughout everything she endured as a child, Shannan always remained close to her family. She made sure to stay in touch and used any spare money she had to buy gifts for her loved ones. Shannan's mom, Mari, persistently tried to persuade her to quit escorting and return home to live with the family, because she was really worried about her well-being. However, Shannan reassured her that she didn't need to work as much, but Mari remained deeply concerned about her daughter's safety and situation. In reality, Shannan fibbed about her raking in more cash than she actually did. Why the deception? Well, she didn't want her family, especially her boyfriend Alex, to stress out about her financial situation. If they knew the truth about her earnings, especially Alex, he might get upset, thinking she wasn't making enough. So Shannan painted a rosier picture to keep worries at bay and maintain some peace in her relationships. Gilgo Beach, a peaceful stretch on Long Island, has an unexpectedly dark side that has grabbed the attention of true crime enthusiasts. This coastal community, known for its scenic beauty, has become infamous due to a series of unsolved murders and mysterious disappearances. The tight-knit neighborhood is now forever linked with a chilling history that leaves both locals and investigators seeking answers. But what really transpired on Gilgo Beach years ago? Why were secrets of the murders concealed by the police for so long, and what were they hiding? In 2010, in a new chapter of Shannan's life, she teamed up with a new guy, Michael Pack, who took on the role of her driver. Their deal was straightforward. He'd get a third of Shannan's earnings for driving her around and ensuring her safety. Now, things got pretty intense on the night of May 1st, 2010, when Shannan received a response to her ad, and it led her to a man named Joseph Brewer, residing in the serene beachfront enclave known as Oak Beach. Oak Beach is a community that sits in the township of Babylon, Suffolk County, New York, nestled in a quiet corner of the Barrier Islands. To get there, Michael chauffeured Shannan in his black SUV all the way to Joseph's place on Fairway Drive in Oak Beach. The drive from New Jersey took a little over 2 hours, and Shannan rolled up at Joseph's doorstep at around 2 a.m. Once she went inside, Michael patiently waited in his car. However, about 3 hours later, his peace was shattered by a tapping on his driver's side window. When he looked outside, to his surprise, it was none other than Joseph. He rolled down the window and urgently told Michael that he needed help getting Shannan out of his house. Michael, being the driver and responsible for Shannan's safety, went inside to find Shannan crouched behind a couch, gripping her cell phone with the look of sheer terror on her face. Something wasn't right. It seemed like Shannan might be under the influence of drugs and appeared pretty delirious. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, Shannan dialed 911. But the woman who seemed perfectly fine just hours ago now couldn't even pinpoint her location. Instead, she kept repeating unsettling phrases like, "They are trying to kill me," and "Somebody's after me." In the background, she could be heard challenging the men with questions like, "Leave me alone," and "Are you going to kill me?" While the 911 operator tried to soothe Shannan and piece together the situation, Michael, Shannan's driver, found himself caught in confusion. Was this a bipolar episode or drug-induced psychosis? Or was someone genuinely trying to harm her? Michael wasn't sure, and rather than trying his best to take Shannan back, this was when the whole strange sequence of events kicked off.
I'm Detective Lieutenant Kevin Byra, the commanding officer of the Suffolk County Police Homicide Section. This video was made to explain the circumstances surrounding the 3 911 calls made on the day Shannan Gilbert went missing. The full, unedited 911 calls are available, and I encourage people to listen to them in their entirety. Portions of the call taken out of context will sound sensational. During the early morning hours of May 1st, 2010, Shannan Gilbert, a Craigslist sex worker and resident of Jersey City, New Jersey, traveled from Manhattan to meet a client, Joseph Brewer, at his home at 8 The Fairway, Oak Beach, New York. Shannan was driven to Oak Beach from Manhattan by her driver, Michael Pack. Neither one was familiar with the area, neither one had been there before, and neither one had met Brewer before. Pack waited in the car while Shannan was inside with Brewer. Pack was her de facto security. At 4:51 a.m., while at Brewer's house, Shannan called 911. This call lasts for more than 21 minutes. At times, Shannan is speaking calmly, but slurring her words. At times, she is not responsive, and at times, she is screaming. During this call, Brewer and Pack are heard trying to get Shannan to leave the house. Shannan eventually does leave the house and runs to Gus Coletti's house, located at 17 The Fairway, which causes him to call 911 at 5:22 a.m.
State Police, Trooper Fry. State Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Okay, where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you, ma'am?
I don't know.
You're driving right now?
No, I'm inside the house.
I'm sorry?
I'm inside the house.
What house?
I don't know. Can you trace where I am?
I'm sorry?
Can you trace where I am?
No, I can't. What's your callback number you're calling from?
Huh?
What phone number are you calling from?
Somebody's after me. Please.
Are you in Suffolk County or Nassau County?
I'm in Long Island.
Where on Long Island are you?
No. No.
Michael was growing increasingly frustrated as it became clear to him that Shannan was in a state of complete irrationality. So feeling stuck, he decided to step outside and wait, hoping that Shannan might come out on her own, but he was caught between Shannan's erratic behavior and the uncertainty of what was really going on. However, just a couple of minutes later, Michael witnessed Shannan rushing out of the house, stumbling down the front steps, and sprinting down the road. She was in full panic mode and was screaming for help while still on the line with the 911 operator. So concerned for Shannan's well-being, Michael made the decision to follow her in his SUV, fearing she might end up hurting herself. However, the sight of Michael's SUV behind her only intensified Shannan's fear. Being desperate, she sprinted even faster and reached the house where she began urgently banging on the door. The resident who opened the door was a 75-year-old man named Gustav Coletti, and he tried to inquire if Shannan was okay, but she struggled to utter any coherent words. It was as if fear had a tight grip on her, making it difficult for her to express what was happening.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me? She's in my house on my phone. Why? Huh? Well, I don't know, but it was transferred to me. Why? No. Are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me?
Don't get yourself hurt. Where are you going? Where are you
Once again, Shannan dashed out of Gustav's house, leaving him utterly confused. So in response, Gustav quickly dialed 911 to report the perplexing and distressing situation that had just unfolded at his doorstep.
Suffolk Police 873, what's the location of your emergency?
Yes, I live at Oak Beach in the association. There's a young girl about 14 years old running around here screaming, and there's some guy trying to follow her.
What's the address there?
I'm at 17 The Fairway.
All right, you have a description of the girl or the boy?
Pardon me?
Do you have a description of the girl or the boy?
The girl is about 14 years old, got blonde hair, very small. The boy, I can't tell. He was into like a Suburban.
What color?
Black.
After Shannan rushed out of Gustav's house, Michael approached him to find out where she went and mentioned to Gustav that calling 911 might not be the best move, as it could potentially get Shannan into trouble. Following her departure, Shannan continued running down the road, screaming and pleading for help, but unfortunately, her phone disconnected from the 911 call. Michael hit the road again to find Shannan, who once more tried to seek help by knocking on another door. This time, the house belonged to an older woman named Barbara Brennan. However, Barbara chose not to answer the door because she was scared and hesitant to get involved in the unfolding situation.
Suffolk Police 875, what is the location of your emergency?
43 The Bayou. Some woman is knocking at my door.
What town are you in?
Oak Beach Association.
What's the nearest corner street now?
Ocean Parkway. She says she's in danger.
Do you know her or no?
No, I don't. I'm not letting her in.
She's banging on your door now?
Yes.
Did she say what kind of danger?
No.
Oh.
And we live in a gated community.
What's your name, ma'am?
Barbara Brennan.
What's there a name to that community?
Oak Beach Association.
Oak Beach Association.
And I have an elderly mother here.
All right, I'll get somebody right over there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The woman also called the police after Shannan ran from her home. And despite Michael's hour-long search, Shannan seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Being completely exhausted and finding no sign of Shannan, Michael made the tough call to leave Oak Beach just before the police arrived to respond to the 911 calls from other concerned residents. Shannan was gone, and the mystery of her sudden disappearance loomed large, setting the stage for a series of events that would eventually unfold in the Gilgo Beach serial killings case. The police gathered all the information from witnesses about Shannan's frantic run, screams, and alarming statements about someone wanting to harm her. But the only evidence they found were a pair of footprints in the sand, leading to a tangled, marshy area overlooking Gilgo Beach. However, when the police learned that Shannan was accompanied by a guy named Michael in an SUV, they swiftly traced him down. Their curiosity piqued, and they questioned Michael about Shannan's whereabouts for hours and the events that happened on the mysterious night of May 1st, 2010. Michael explained that he assumed that Shannan would make it home on her own, and he too was in the dark about what had suddenly happened to her that night. On the flip side, the next day, Shannan's boyfriend, Alex, woke up to the unsettling realization that Shannan hadn't returned home. So being extremely concerned for her safety, especially given her line of work, Alex reached out to her family to see if they had any idea where she might be, but they were just as clueless as Alex. The family then reached out to Michael to find out about Shannan, and he shared every detail of the mysterious night, emphasizing that he had no clue about Shannan's current whereabouts. The realization hit them swiftly that Shannan was in trouble, and Alex was the one who took charge and stepped forward to file the missing persons report. As the days passed with no sign of Shannan, her mysterious disappearance became a cause for concern for everyone involved. The police took an intense interest in the case and focused their questioning on Michael and Joseph, as they were the last to see Shannan alive. Both of their cars underwent thorough searches, and the scrutiny extended to Joseph's home. The reason being that Shannan's behavior took a strange turn after she arrived at Joseph's place, which added a layer of intrigue to the investigation. Both Michael and Joseph also willingly underwent and passed polygraph tests. They spared no effort in trying to prove their innocence, vehemently asserting that they had nothing to do with Shannan's disappearance. The police also didn't leave any stone unturned and scrutinized Gustav as well, in whose home Shannan sought refuge during her panic. However, even in this investigation, they couldn't uncover any evidence which could link him to Shannan's disappearance. Now the situation turned increasingly frustrating for the police, because on that night, Shannan herself was desperately seeking help, yet none of the people present seemed to have any connection to her disappearance. Despite thorough investigations, polygraph tests, and searches, the mystery remained unsolved, and the puzzling question lingered. If no one there was involved, and no one saw anyone else around, then where on earth could Shannan be? The case of Shannan's disappearance became a headline-making mystery and caught the attention of the Suffolk County Missing Person Bureau, and because of all the strange events that night, the investigation was propelled into the spotlight. They dove into Shannan's 911 call to piece together her potential location and the area she might have been calling from. For this, the investigators traced Shannan's path after she left Joseph's home. However, the trail went cold after reaching a bushy area, and it was as if Shannan had vanished into thin air. But it didn't take long when just 2 days after Shannan was reported missing, her mother, Mari, received a baffling phone call. This call added a whole new level of confusion and made the case even more disturbing. The call came from a man who said that his name was Dr. Peter Hackett and that he ran a home for wayward girls. He shared that he encountered Shannan on the night she fled from Joseph's house. Dr. Hackett explained that he provided her with some calming medication, but she left and he was really concerned for her well-being. Now this was really confusing for Mari, and she wasn't ready to believe the doctor, as the whole story seemed suspicious to her, because Dr. Hackett claimed Shannan gave him her number, something Mari couldn't imagine her daughter would do. The confusion deepened more as Mari wondered why, if Dr. Hackett had their number, he hadn't reached out earlier when Shannan was still with him. Mari knew that Shannan wouldn't seek refuge in a place like a home for wayward girls. So instead of just waiting and assuming things a few days later, they took matters into their own hands and headed to Oak Beach to personally confront Dr. Hackett about the call and search for Shannan. So after arriving at Dr. Hackett's house, Shannan's family found him in the midst of hosting a large party. They directly approached him on his deck and introduced themselves as Shannan's family. The conversation took an unexpected turn as they inquired about the call. Strangely, Dr. Hackett denied any knowledge of what they were talking about and refuted making a call about offering assistance to Shannan. After listening to this, the family were really shocked and unable to grasp the unfolding situation, so they wasted no time and promptly informed the police about it. The authorities in turn questioned Dr. Hackett, who maintained his stance of never making that call to Mari. Dr. Hackett, a prominent figure in the Oak Beach community, served as the sole doctor in the area. He used to do house calls and offer medical services to Oak Beach residents, which was operated from a location less than a half a mile away from Joseph's house. This proximity led the police to consider the possibility that Shannan might have run towards his house on the night she went missing. However, after a thorough investigation, the authorities became convinced that Dr. Hackett wasn't connected to Shannan's disappearance. Being unable to find any new leads or signs of Shannan, her family felt a sense of helplessness and desperation, so they decided to initiate their own search. For that, they started distributing flyers, engaging in conversations, and questioning everyone in Oak Beach, asking them to jog their memories and seek information about the events of that mysterious night. Shannan's family was sensing a lack of urgency in the official investigation, and it was making them frustrated. But they found hope when Suffolk County Detective John Malia stepped in to help. He is known for his expertise and aided by his highly skilled German Shepherd, Blue. Detective Malia agreed to join the search for Shannan. This collaboration marked a turning point, as his dedication and his unique skills of his canine companion brought renewed energy to the efforts of finding Shannan. Considering the possibility of finding crucial evidence, Detective John, accompanied by his loyal canine partner Blue, ventured into the overgrown terrain of Oak Beach, where Shannan was last seen. As they navigated the thick vegetation and marshy areas, the duo faced many challenges, including an encounter with poison ivy. But despite their diligent efforts, the search yielded no results, which left John feeling more desperate. So he felt the need for a fresh perspective and decided to take a break and delve deeper into the details of Shannan's case, in hopes to uncover any overlooked clues that could lead to her whereabouts. Finally, after 11 months, they returned back to the search area for another attempt. On December 11, 2010, during a routine training exercise with his faithful dog Blue, Detective John caught a scent on the parkway where Shannan vanished. Filled with hope, he believed they were on the verge of finding her, who he already assumed was dead. Navigating through the dense vegetation, that's where everything took a dramatic turn, and the scent led them into a crucial discovery. The anticipation and determination of that day marked a pivotal moment in the search for Shannan, because she wasn't the only one who was actually missing. The investigation took a shocking twist when they found skeletal remains of a woman wrapped in almost a completely deteriorated burlap bag. The investigators initially thought it was Shannan. However, it turned out not to be her. In fact, the detectives had no idea what they'd actually be dealing with after this first discovery. After the woman was brought into the medical examiner, it became clear that she wasn't Shannan. The absence of a titanium plate in the jaw, which was something that Shannan definitely would have had because of her previous surgery, which she got years back, ruled out her as the victim. This revelation left the investigators with a new task about the unidentified woman's identity, and raised more concerns about the possibility of additional victims in the area. The discovery of the first body triggered a cascade of questions for the detectives, and in their pursuit of answers, Detective John and his dog Blue returned to search the area again. Shockingly, the sequence of finding the remains didn't end there, because just 500 feet from the initial discovery, they found a second body, wrapped in yet another disintegrated burlap sack. Now this really fueled an intensified search, and within hours, 2 more bodies were uncovered. Interestingly, all the discovered bodies were under 5 feet tall, lacked clothing and jewelry, and were wrapped in burlap. Even the medical examiner's findings pointed to a grim pattern. All the women appeared to have been strangled. So keeping all the similarities in mind, the Suffolk County Police Department made a grave announcement on December 14, 2010. They declared to the public that they believed a serial killer was at large, which casted a shadow of fear and urgency over the investigation. In just a few days, all the victims were identified. So let's take a look at all the victims and the similarities they shared with Shannan. The first victim was a 25-year-old woman named Maureen Barnes. She was born on July 14, 1982, and faced challenges at a very young age, when she became a mother at just 17 years old. By the time she was 25, she had 2 children and started living in Connecticut. Maureen faced a lot of financial struggles despite working as a card dealer at a casino, and later as a telemarketer. These jobs couldn't adequately support her and her 2 children. Much like Shannan, Maureen also turned to escort work and started posting ads on websites like Craigslist and Backpage to make ends meet. On July 9, 2007, Maureen suddenly informed a friend that she was meeting a client near a hostel in Manhattan, New York, where they both were staying. However, after this, Maureen never turned back, and there was no communication or news of her. Being concerned for Maureen, her friend anxiously awaited her return, giving her until July 14, 2007 to come back on her own, but she never did. Finally, her friend reported Maureen missing, which led to the NYPD involvement in the investigation. During their search, authorities found that between July 6 and July 9th, Maureen had 16 interactions with a phone number, which was traced back to a burner phone. On July 9th, Maureen's phone signal was detected near Midtown Manhattan. Surprisingly, there was no further activity until July 12th, when 2 outbound calls were made close to the Long Island Expressway, suggesting an attempt to check her voicemail. Now shifting to the second victim, Melissa Bartholomew, who was 24 years old. She was born on April 14, 1985, and grew up in Buffalo, New York. And after high school, she also obtained a cosmetology license. Similar to Shannan, Melissa was also fiercely independent. But when faced with financial struggles, she also decided to venture into escort work and started advertising on websites like Craigslist and Adult Friend Finder. So on July 3, 2009, Melissa received a call from a potential client, and this same number reached out to her again on July 6th, 9th, and 10th. Being extremely concerned about these calls, she also reported them to the police. But despite their efforts, the investigators discovered that the calls were made from a burner phone, which made it challenging for them to trace and identify the caller. Sadly, on July 10, 2009, tragedy unfolded as Melissa was last seen outside her Bronx apartment after she had informed her friends that she was heading to Manhattan to meet with a client. So after taking a cab for it, Melissa was believed to have been picked up by the client and taken to Long Island. However, when her family didn't hear from her the next day, their attempts to report her missing were initially brushed off, as Melissa was considered an adult and had been missing for less than 24 hours. But after a few days, Melissa's family finally persuaded the NYPD to treat her disappearance seriously, and they opened a missing persons file on Melissa. Almost a week later, Melissa's 15-year-old sister, Amanda, was suddenly filled with excitement when she saw a phone call coming from Melissa's phone number. However, when Amanda answered the call, a man started taunting her and saying disgusting things. So the family quickly reported this to the investigators, which led them to suspect the man might be involved in law enforcement because he was constantly hanging up before they could even trace the call. However, the investigators were able to trace a few calls from a burner phone to crowded areas like Times Square and a location north of Gilgo Beach called Massapequa. But the challenge arose when they discovered that the number was registered under a phony name, which made it difficult for the police to determine the caller's true identity. Amanda also revealed that the caller knew her name, recognized her appearance, and also inquired if she too was involved in escort work, just like her sister. The caller continued to make disturbing statements, claiming that he had killed Melissa and was observing her body decay. This ordeal was profoundly distressing for the family, but despite their anguish, they felt powerless to do anything to locate Melissa. The next victim was 22-year-old Megan Waterman, who was born on January 18, 1988 in Scarborough. Her mother struggled with alcoholism and was often criticized by Megan's grandmother for being harmful to the children. Even after these difficulties, Megan's story took a darker turn as she grew older. Megan's grandmother also sought custody of the children due to the concerns about her mother, but it led Megan and her little brother to be placed in foster care. In this new environment, Megan was diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age and occasionally got into trouble at school, notably for engaging in fights. However, Megan's challenges didn't end there because at the age of 17, she became pregnant by a man who was in his 30s, and it led her to make the decision to drop out of school after giving birth in 2006. Following this, Megan also entered a relationship with a gang member named Akeem, with whom she started engaging in substance use during their time together. But Akeem ended up forcing Megan to begin working as an escort, and she too began posting ads on Craigslist and Backpage. She also had been arrested on one occasion for soliciting during a sting operation, and was known to frequently work out of various hotels. Now on June 5, 2010, Megan's phone received a call from a burner phone, which was newly activated that day. Normally, Akeem would accompany Megan on jobs to ensure her safety, but this time, she insisted that she needed to go alone. The reason was that the client had offered her $1,500 to stay the entire night, which made it a tempting opportunity for her. Megan had been in contact with the burner phone around 1:30 a.m. and was last seen departing from the Holiday Inn Express in New York. Strangely, after she left, there was no more activity from her phone, except for a ping in the Massapequa area, which added a mysterious element to her disappearance. Worried about Megan's sudden silence, Akeem began reaching out to her friends and family on June 7, 2010, in hopes for any information about her whereabouts. However, due to his involvement in criminal activities, Akeem hesitated to report her missing immediately. Now by June 9th, with still no word from Megan, and not any attempts to even contact her daughter, her family finally reported her as missing. Unfortunately, even after the initial report, there were still no significant efforts made to search for Megan, and over time, the case was closed without a resolution. The fourth victim was 27-year-old Amber Costello, who was born in October 1983, to an upper-middle-class family in Charlotte, North Carolina. In contrast to the other victims, Amber and her sister Kim had a relatively normal childhood, with a close-knit family. However, everything took a dark turn when at the age of 5, Amber suffered a severe and horrific attack by a neighbor, which altered the course of her life. Amber's parents were also extremely devastated by the attack on their daughter, and in a fit of rage, her father confronted the neighbor with a gun and threatened him. It's still unclear if the neighbor faced legal consequences for his actions or not, But the traumatic event took a toll on Amber's mother, which led to severe panic attacks. Overwhelmed by guilt, she ended up in a mental treatment hospital, and the whole family faced immense challenges in coping with the aftermath of this tragic incident. Her father turned to heavy drinking and faced multiple DUI charges over the years. Amber's older sister, shouldering the responsibility of caring for both of them, became involved in a difficult situation, likely in escorting the ring, as a means to support the family. Seeing her sister doing this job, Amber, when became a teenager too, followed her sister's footsteps and joined the escorting ring as well. On September 1, 2010, Amber's phone received a call from a mysterious burner number situated in West Amityville and Massapequa Park. This enigmatic caller, whose movements could be traced, made contact with Amber multiple times before making his way to her apartment in Babylon. Amber, along with friends at her house, decided to hatch a plan to deceive the client. When the client arrived and placed money on the table, Amber's friend suddenly emerged and played the role of her boyfriend and firmly asked the client to leave. It was a clever attempt to fend off a potentially risky situation. But as he left, the client sent a text to Amber and expressed his discontent, asking if he now had credit for the next encounter, referring to the money he had left behind. This client becomes a crucial figure in the case, so keep him in mind as we delve deeper into the story. The following day, Amber informed her friend that she was meeting her client, who insisted she leave her cell phone behind. Sadly, this choice turned out to be the worst decision of Amber's life, as it marked the last time anyone saw her alive. Surprisingly, even after this, no one reported her missing, possibly due to fears of getting entangled in drug or other illegal activities prevalent in the area. Now, these 4 victims became known as the Gilgo Beach 4, and they all shared eerie similarities. All were under 5 feet tall and employed by the same escort company. Despite Shannan still being missing, her case unveiled something more sinister, which sent shockwaves through the entire police department. The focus on Shannan's disappearance brought attention to a grim pattern that had gone unnoticed before. The spotlight shifted, sparking a rigorous investigation, as many believed a serial killer was at work. On March 29, 2011, during the search for Shannan, police stumbled upon more chilling evidence near the original crime scene, which was about a mile from where the initial victims were discovered. Police unearthed a skull, a forearm, and a set of hands that was later identified as belonging to Jessica Taylor, whose torso had been found back in 2003. The pressure was really intense on them, and they expanded their search further. That's when on April 4, 2011, searchers discovered 3 additional sets of human remains along Ocean Parkway, nestled between Oak Beach and Gilgo Beach. Among these grim findings, investigators encountered the remains of an unidentified Asian male dressed in women's clothing, which raised the possibility of him being a transgender. The victim's cause of death was determined as blunt force trauma. Additionally, they identified a skull, a pair of hands, and a foot belonging to Valerie Mack, a woman whose torso had been discovered back in 2000. Adding to the horror, the discoveries continued with the finding of an unidentified female toddler, which was tragically referred to as Baby Doe. She was wrapped in a blanket, and the child showed clear signs of trauma. The unsettling events persisted on April 11, 2011, when a plastic bag containing upper and lower extremities was discovered near Jones Beach. The victims had been labeled as Jane Doe 3 and Jane Doe 7. The investigation revealed that Jane Doe 3's remains were found along Ocean Parkway. Additionally, there's a haunting connection, as it's believed that Jane Doe 7's legs were discovered on a nearby island back in 1996. These unsettling discoveries in Oak Beach, Long Island, and New York left the residents deeply fearful for their safety and that of their families. The potential presence of an undetected serial killer in their midst really heightened their concerns. People began questioning the NYPD, wondering why there hadn't been an investigation earlier. The whole police department was under great pressure from the public because the news spread rapidly, and people were skeptical and unwilling to merely rely on the ongoing investigation. While Shannan Gilbert's disappearance had unveiled a grim reality of multiple victims, the pressing question lingered: where was Shannan herself? On December 6, 2011, a search of the thick marsh on Oak Beach revealed Shannan Gilbert's belongings: purse, ID, phone, jeans, and shoes. It didn't take long when just 2 days later her body was discovered, a quarter-mile away from her belongings. Strangely, authorities claimed Shannan's death was unrelated to the other bodies found, and the police commissioner suggested that Shannan got disoriented in the tall marsh grass, possibly by falling and drowning. Yet Shannan's family doubted this explanation. They found it hard to accept her death as an accident, particularly because she was discovered face up in just a couple of inches of water. Shannan's family sought an independent autopsy to unravel the mystery of her death. Although the cause of her death was officially labeled as undetermined, investigators noted a significant detail: a broken bone in her throat. This raised suspicions, which suggested that there was the possibility that Shannan, like the other victims, might have met a tragic end through strangulation. The Long Island serial killer case stirred up intense speculation, and many started blaming the police department for their negligence in previous cases. Rumors circulated which suggested that the authorities might not have been eager to solve the case and could even be connected to it. The public's finger-pointing intensified, creating a cloud of doubt and mistrust around the investigation. Over the years, various suspects were considered in this unsolved case, but in a surprising turn of events, in December 2015, the Suffolk County Police Commissioner revealed that the FBI would officially join the investigation. This announcement coincided with the indictment of former Police Chief James Burke, who was charged with civil rights violations and conspiracy linked to covering up his actions during an internal affairs investigation. He also faced accusations of hindering the FBI's involvement in the Long Island serial killer case, allegedly to shield his own behind-the-scenes activities. There were even people who thought that Chief Burke could have been involved in the killing somehow. However, the subsequent investigation cleared him out from any kind of direct accusations, and the ongoing inquiry seeks to unravel the real motivations behind Burke's actions. Fueled by a determination to crack the case, and also because of the mounting public pressure, a new police commissioner took a significant step. Images of the belt found at the crime scene were released, bearing the letters HM or WH. Their interpretation depended on the position and angle of observation. The belt was believed to have been handled by the elusive serial killer and became a focal point for investigators. They started seeking the public's assistance and urged anyone with information on the belt's origin to step forward. The year 2022 saw a renewal effort as Suffolk County Police launched a new task force dedicated to the Gilgo Beach homicide investigation. This task force brought together investigators from federal, New York State, and local law enforcement agencies, which aimed to breathe new life into the case and ultimately bring the elusive killer to justice. In December 2022, just weeks into his role as police commissioner, Suffolk County's top cop, Rodney Harrison, made a commitment to prioritize the Gilgo Beach case. As the time passed, there were various developments and DNA testings in the case. However, everything took a dramatic turn on March 14, 2023, almost 13 years after the tragic incidents were discovered. This particular event proved to be a game-changer, which brought a new perspective to the investigation. Imagine the shock of finding out that your next-door neighbor, someone you've seen every day, is revealed to be a serial killer. It's the kind of revelation that's hard to fathom and make you question what might be happening just around the corner from your own home. This turning point in the investigation emerged during an interview with Amber Costello's roommate. He revealed that a friend named John had visited their house in Babylon Street on September 1, 2010, the day before Amber went missing. John shared details about a client who drove a Chevy Avalanche, and it turned out this client was the last person Amber met before her disappearance. This revelation became a crucial breakthrough in the long-standing Gilgo Beach case.
He was described as 6'4" or 6'6", 250 plus pounds, and just not like a muscle-bound person, but just a very large human being, and that's who he is.
You used the word ogre in court.
Yeah, well, that was one of the witnesses utilized that term, ogre, meaning a very thick, thick-framed individual.
This revelation sparked a flurry of activity with the police department. What if this man with the Chevy Avalanche was linked to all the murders? Could he be a common thread connecting the victims' disappearances? An intensive search for the owner of the Chevy Avalanche started, and it was after about 6 weeks when finally the police had their prime suspect.
My coworker called me. And she said, did you hear what happened to Rex? And I'm like, no. She says, it's Rex. I said, no way.
I even thought to myself, it's crazy that there's 2 Rex Heuermans out there.
Rex Heuerman is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families.
The man they were talking about is Rex Heuerman, a 6'4" architect and a father.
Once we established him as a suspect at March 14th of 2022, the case started to really go fast. And then it just kept on getting faster and faster and faster, culminating in the end of the grand jury and the takedown.
Rex was residing just 20 minutes away from Gilgo Beach in Massapequa Park, the very town where Megan's phone was last connected to the cell tower. Additionally, Rex worked at his architectural firm in Midtown Manhattan, only blocks away from where Maureen disappeared. In the same area where threatening calls to Melissa's little sister were reported, Rex resided in a rundown house. He lived a seemingly ordinary life. Rex had a daughter and stepson with his second wife, Asa, who hailed from Iceland and would often visit her family during the summers. Police suspected that it was during these trips, including those to Iceland, Rex had committed the murders. John Parisi, who grew up with Rex, mentioned that Rex had experienced bullying as a child and lacked confidence. Despite his size and strength, Rex never fought back against anyone.
I remember meeting Rex when I was in 1st or 2nd grade. He was a loner, not many friends. The children were super mean to him, made fun of him and teased him, got upset and started swinging. He would hurt somebody, but he never did. He was rejected by many girls. We all go through that awkward stage growing up, and it seemed like that awkward stage stayed with him longer than usual.
Rex also appeared in a YouTube video in 2023 and was interviewed by Antonia Mira, where Rex shared his experiences. Antonia expressed surprise, knowing that when he met Rex, he never thought he could be someone capable of committing such crimes.
There's nothing in my interview that made me think that this person in front of me is a dangerous person. He was very, very, very smart. He was pleased when he was doing it.
That he could
outwit the system.
But how did the police finally find Rex? How did the man who was never on radar become the prime suspect? The breakthrough in identifying Rex occurred when the police delved into Amber's phone records from 2010. They uncovered a persistent caller, a specific client who incessantly used a burner phone. The use of these prepaid burner phones, easily accessible for anonymous communication, became a key link in the investigation. Authorities noted that Maureen, Melissa, and Megan had all been in contact with burner numbers before their disappearance in 2012. So they decided to collaborate with the FBI and traced most of these calls to cell towers in a concentrated area of Massapequa Park, and prompted an intensified search for the individuals connected to these calls.
aha moment when all of a sudden his name came up?
Once we were able to attach the avalanche inside of that Massapequa box, which then attached to Rex Heuerman, that was a moment where we said, okay, there's something here.
The task force also confirmed that Rex indeed used those burner phones, and he had 2 different burner numbers in 2023. So they closely monitored one of those accounts and also documented 3 email accounts with fake names like John Springfield, Thomas Hawk, and Hunter 1903, and all linked to Rex burners numbers. Rex also used one of these burner phones to send selfies, soliciting and arranging personal activities. It was one of those accounts that linked to Rex and was used for thousands of searches related to adult contact, sadistic torture videos, and child content. The searches also included disturbing depictions of women being abused and killed. But while the investigators were closely monitoring Rex, he too attempted to turn the tables by spying on them. He delved into searches about the task force, the Gilgo victims, and extended his focus to their relatives, sisters, and children. Rex aimed to locate and gather information about these individuals as part of his disturbing activities. While circumstantial evidence was piling up, investigators sought more concrete proof. They had physical evidence from the Gilgo 4, notably a male hair discovered in the burlap that had restrained and transported Megan Waterman's body, The question now was whether they could establish a link between this evidence and Rex. But for that, they wanted Rex's DNA without his knowledge. In order to obtain his DNA discreetly, investigators placed him under surveillance and started observing his activities closely. The breakthrough finally came when Rex casually disposed of a pizza box in a trash can in Midtown Manhattan. Detectives quickly seized this opportunity and collected the discarded pizza box without his knowledge. It took no time when Detective Tierney swiftly confirmed that Rex's DNA that was discovered on the pizza crust matched the DNA profile found with Megan's body. This unique DNA profile was exceptionally rare and appeared in only 0.04% of the population, solidifying the connection between Rex and the crime.
That was a remarkable day. It was, the weekend, and you get the report and you read it, and then you read it again, and then you read it a third time, and then you read it a fourth time, and then you start making calls.
With the conclusive DNA evidence, search histories, and details from the burner phones, investigators were now certain they had found their serial killer responsible for the Gilgo Beach murders, Rex Heuermann. In plain clothes, officers finally apprehended Rex around the corner from his office on July 13, 2023. The community was left in shock when the next day, the police descended on Rex's house to search for further evidence, which unveiled a sense of urgency and tension in the neighborhood.
This guy is supposed to be an architectural genius, and instead of he's building houses, he's building graves.
I remember when they were searching for the bodies, I wouldn't drive on Ocean Parkway because I was so scared.
I mean, he kind of stands out, but it's creepy, it's weird. It's a quiet town, everyone knows each other, nothing really goes on, so it was just surprising to hear and kind of scary.
I was like, holy crap, unbelievable right now, town.
The police discovered a soundproof room in the basement of Rex's residence, which led them to suspect that at least one victim may have met their demise within its confines. In a thorough search of Rex's property, police also employed ground-penetrating sonar and cadaver dogs to investigate the backyard for any potential remains. But their efforts yielded no further discoveries. It is still unclear what was the purpose of the basement compartment in Rex's residence. Authorities are uncertain whether it served as a potential chamber for sinister activities, or merely housed Rex's extensive collection of 300 firearms. This concealed room was no ordinary space. It resembled a formidable vault, complete with a substantial and secure safe door. Rex had gone to great lengths reinforcing the walls with layers of new concrete, which created a structure that was possibly 2 or 3 feet thick. As the search persisted for hours, which turned the entire house into a chaotic mess, unsuitable for anyone to live, one surprising individual decided to remain amidst the upheaval. It was none other than Rex's wife, Asa. However, grappling with the disbelief that she had been living with a serial killer for so long, Asa took a significant step. She filed for divorce from Rex. In the aftermath of these harrowing events, Asa and her children find themselves navigating a completely altered life. Financial struggles had become a pressing reality for them, which added to their challenges they would face. To this day, wherever they go, the relentless gaze of the media follows, and hushed conversations trail them as people discuss the unsettling incidents that unfolded in their lives. Finally, the same day on July 14, 2023, in a courtroom filled with tension and emotion, Rex had his first appearance and staunchly pleaded not guilty to all charges. Rex's wife, Asa, also stood by his side and offered her support. Despite Rex's lawyer passionately asserting his innocence, Rex himself, in a vulnerable moment, broke down in tears, repeatedly stating, "I didn't do that." As Rex still remains behind bars awaiting his trial, the intrigue surrounding this case persists, with fresh information emerging and details gradually coming to light. We're committed to closely following this ongoing saga and would stay on top of every update. Just as the investigators emphasized that this is merely the beginning, we'll continue delving into the intricacies of this case, providing coverage on any forthcoming developments. The story unfolds, and we're here to keep you informed every step of the way. So what do you think about the case? What was the motive behind Rex Heuermann's alleged allegations? Are there potential accomplices or individuals connected to Rex Heuermann in the commission of these crimes, considering the complexity of the case and the extensive investigations? We'd love to hear from you. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to drop your recommendations in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled for the next mystery to unfold.
May 2004. 3 matching suitcases scattered across the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia.
The latest and third suitcase containing human remains was brought ashore Sunday. Police got a tip from a recreational boater about its location in the water near the second island of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. Then last Tuesday, a student researcher found the second one on Fisherman's Island.
What's inside? As bad as you can imagine.
The contents were covered with a thick trash bag, like a hefty bag or something. And I said, uh-oh. I was a little bit nervous then when I saw the black bags in there. So it's a turn to say something to Dee, and while I was talking to Dee, the young boy reached down and ripped open the plastic trash bags. There was no doubt of what it was. It was a set of human legs.
The person inside the suitcases was 39-year-old Bill McGuire. The unsettling question echoed, who was Bill, and what secrets did he hold that might have made him a target for such a gruesome end? In the heart of New Jersey, situated in a region called Woodbridge Township, it's a place where diverse cultures blend seamlessly, creating a unique charm. Woodbridge is more than just a location. It's a home filled with warmth and stories. Talking about safety, Woodbridge Township is a generally secure place. With a low crime percentage, the community enjoys a sense of peace and security. The parks and waterfront not only provide scenic beauty, but also serve as communal spaces where families and individuals can unwind without worry. Yet beneath this friendly exterior, there's a chilling tale that shook the town. The story of Bill McGuire is a dark moment that unfolded in this seemingly peaceful town. It's a reminder that even in the most everyday places, mysteries can be hidden. William Theodore McGuire, also known as Bill, was born on September 21, 1964 in Bloomfield, New Jersey. He was the son of William Christopher McGuire and Ruth Theodora Sell McGuire. Bill grew up in Bloomfield and graduated from Bloomfield High School in 1982. He then went on to study computer science at Rutgers University, where he graduated in 1986. After college, Bill worked as a computer programmer for a variety of companies. He was a hard worker and was well respected by his colleagues. In his free time, Bill enjoyed playing golf, fishing, and spending time with his family. Bill was a kind and generous man who was always willing to help others. He was a charismatic and witty individual. He got married to Marcy Pollock in 1986, but that marriage was short-lived, leading to their divorce in 1994. The couple moved to Virginia Beach in 1986, where Bill worked as an electronics technician in the Navy. Marcy, originally from Vernon, New Jersey, joined him in this relocation. Around 1990, Bill and Marcy returned to the Atlantic City area. However, it was in this new setting that Bill's behavior changed drastically. He became deeply involved in excessive gambling and drinking. This is when Marcy noticed a stark deterioration in their relationship. The situation escalated in 1995 when Marcy filed a restraining order against him after Bill threw rocks through her window, ultimately leading to their divorce. Bill then met Melanie Lynn Slate in 1998 at a restaurant in Woodbridge, New Jersey, where Melanie was working part-time while attending nursing school. Born on October 8, 1972 in America, Melanie Lynn McGuire, formerly known as Melanie Lynn Slate, grew up in Ridgewood in Middletown Township, New Jersey, attending Middletown High School South. Her academic journey took her to Rutgers University, where she pursued a dual major in math and psychology, graduating in 1994. Achieving the second position in her class, she earned her nursing diploma from the Charles E. Gregory School of Nursing, now Raritan Bay Medical Center, in 1997. When he met Melanie, she perfectly complemented his personality. They quickly fell in love and were married the following year in 1999. The couple soon started a family, welcoming 2 sons into their lives. In 2000, they had their first child, a son. 2 years after that, in 2002, they had their second child, another son. Their marriage seemed picture perfect, filled with love and laughter. However, beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to appear. Financial struggles began to weigh heavily on the couple. Bill, a computer programmer, had always been responsible and financially secure. but his gambling addiction took a toll on their finances. As debts piled up, stress on their relationship grew. Melanie, a nurse, worked tirelessly to support the family, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to make ends meet. In addition to their financial woes, Bill's gambling addiction also led to emotional turmoil. He would often disappear for days at a time, leaving Melanie to care for the children and manage the household on her own. The trust that was once the foundation of their marriage began to erode, replaced by suspicion and resentment. Despite the growing tensions, Melanie remained committed to her marriage, hoping that things would eventually improve. She tried to help Bill overcome his addiction, but his struggles continued, further straining their relationship. In 2004, the McGuires were planning to move to a larger home in Warren County, New Jersey. They had closed on a new house on April 28, 2004. But before they could move in, the unthinkable happened. On April 29, 2004, Bill vanished from his seemingly ordinary life, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a family in despair. Where did Bill go? What could have been the reason for his sudden disappearance? Weeks had slipped by without a trace of Bill. His absence left a gaping void in the lives of his caring wife and children. But little did they know that Bill's fate was far more extraordinary than they could have ever imagined. On the early morning of May 5, 2004, 3 fishermen, Chris, Don, and their children, went on a fishing trip from Virginia Beach toward the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. As they headed north, parallel to the tunnel, they stumbled upon an unexpected catch: a dark green suitcase floating in the water. Intrigued by the mysterious object, they hauled it aboard their boat. The suitcase was surprisingly heavy, and upon opening it, they made a chilling discovery. Inside was a black sack containing a pair of legs. Horrified by their find, the fishermen immediately contacted police. They wondered if there were more suitcases hidden in the depths of the Chesapeake Bay, each concealing another piece of a human body. Soon police started actively looking for the other missing pieces of this disturbing puzzle. Just days after the first suitcase was found, a student studying the nature reserve on Fisherman's Island made another chilling discovery. A second suitcase, identical to the first, was found on the beach on May 10, 2004. This time, however, it was a human torso, including the arms and head. The wait for answers continued as the search for the missing body parts intensified. 5 days after the second suitcase was found, a fisherman made the final gruesome discovery. On May 15, 2004, a third suitcase, again identical to the first two, was found floating in the Chesapeake Bay. Inside were the victim's pelvis and legs. With the Chesapeake Bay's vast expanse making the search area challenging, investigators decided to turn to the public for help. They released the victim's sketch in the media, hoping that someone would recognize him. Incredibly, it took only a few days for the sketch to yield results. Susan Rice and John Rice, close friends of Bill who hadn't seen him in weeks, played a pivotal role in identifying his body. When they saw a sketch of the victim on TV on May 21, 2004, Sue immediately recognized her friend's distinctive features. Skeptical at first, her husband John also agreed that the sketch bore a striking resemblance to Bill. Recognizing their friend's face, they promptly notified the authorities. The couple also provided crucial information to the investigation. They recalled that Bill had recently been involved in a physical altercation with his wife, Melanie McGuire, and had stormed out of their home. They assumed that he had impulsively fled to Atlantic City, distracting himself on a gambling spree. However, weeks passed without any contact from Bill, raising concern among his friends and family. With Bill's identity confirmed, investigators immediately initiated a fingerprint analysis. Fortunately, Bill's fingerprints were on file and a match was quickly established. The once missing man was now the victim of a horrific crime. Bill's past was shrouded in mystery, with rumors of gambling addiction, domestic abuse, and even a restraining order. Bill's ex-wife, Marcy Pollock, had also spoken out about the emotional and physical abuse she endured during their marriage. She had described their relationship as deteriorating rapidly after their wedding, culminating in a restraining order in 1995 after Bill threw a rock at her window. These allegations painted a troubling picture of Bill's character and only made it difficult to identify the perpetrator. Investigators were now faced with the task of piecing together the events that led to Bill McGuire's death and bringing the perpetrator to justice. The question remains, who was the killer? Imagine a loved one vanishing without a trace, even if it's just for a day. You'd be worried and scared, and you'd do everything you could to find them. Even if you had an argument with them, you would still report them missing to the police. However, in this case, the police received no missing person reports from Melanie regarding Bill's disappearance after being away for almost a month. Instead of immediately reporting him missing, she sought legal counsel from a divorce attorney. On April 30th, 2004, she filed a restraining order against him, further indicating that she felt unsafe in his presence.
State your full name.
Melanie Lynn McGuire. Tell me what happened that brought you to court today for a temporary restraining order?
My husband and I closed on our first house on Wednesday.
That should be a positive thing, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it should. He's been behaving really erratically.
Ms. McGuire, you're safe here. Don't worry. Did he hit you, ma'am?
No, not until, well, I don't mean to sound like I had absolutely no part in this. I said some not nice things and slapped me.
The police were surprised that Bill's wife hadn't reported him missing, especially since they had found the person in the sketch through Bill's friends. The cops decided to look into Melanie McGuire, and what they found was pretty odd. On April 30th, 2004, just 2 days after the big fight between her and Bill, she did something that would make most folks raise an eyebrow.
I'm starting to become more actively angry at him. And I'm thinking, that son of a bitch, I know where he is.
Melanie believed he might be in Atlantic City gambling, so she planned to drive down there and search for his car.
Absolutely not rational, but get in the car and go down there. And I'm driving down, and I take the first pass on this highway, and I see a dark sedan. There's no way. There's no way.
She said her goal was to annoy him by parking the car in the most hectic part of town.
Pull off onto a little side street, and I parked my car, and it was like Mission Impossible. Scooted up to the car, got in, started it, and drove away.
But interestingly here was how people reacted to her.
That just didn't make any sense. That he was physically abusive to her, but then she goes to mess with a car with a guy that she claims she doesn't want to be around.
As the police began monitoring Melanie's activities, they also started tracking her phone calls. In the midst of seemingly ordinary conversations, the police discovered a crucial piece of evidence. In one of these intercepted conversations, Melanie talked to Jim Finn, an old acquaintance from nursing school who had a crush on her. After losing touch for some time, they reconnected in February 2004, with Melanie reaching out when she needed something. Aware of Jim's interest in firearms, she discussed Bill's behavior with him before his disappearance, and Jim, still harboring feelings for Melanie, suggested obtaining a gun for self-defense.
The reason I didn't shoot about buying a gun is because my husband wanted one. You wanted one? Yeah. Not only did he want one, I bought one for him. Why didn't you tell me?
However, investigators listening to their conversations concluded that Jim had no knowledge of any plans related to a murder. When questioned by detectives, Jim was surprised to learn about Melanie purchasing a gun and was unaware of her involvement in any foul play. She then purchased a .38 caliber handgun on April 26, 2004 from a store in Easton, Pennsylvania. This was just 2 days before Bill went missing. Despite constant monitoring and scrutiny, Melanie denied any participation, maintaining her innocence.
Is there anything else you're not telling me? Like what? Like I killed my husband. Did you? No. But thanks for asking. I want you to tell me the truth. I'm telling you the truth. I did not do it.
There was another unexplained road trip, this time to Delaware, just 5 days after her husband's disappearance. Melanie had told Dr. Miller that she was actually furniture shopping in the early hours of May 4, 2004. However, investigators suspect that this trip to Delaware for furniture was a cover-up. The route she took would typically lead to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, contrary to the usual path via the New Jersey Turnpike toward the Delaware Memorial Bridge and Route 13, which heads south to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and Tunnel.
Patty Precioso says that Melanie actually left the night before from New Jersey, drove Bill's remains to Virginia.
We believe that that was when she took the suitcases with Bill's remains and got rid of them in the Chesapeake Bay. And The first suitcase turned up the very next day.
But of course, Melanie thinks this theory is preposterous.
She stated that this theory was absurd because Virginia Beach was an additional 450 miles away from Delaware. Considering the considerable distance, it was implausible to cover such a vast stretch within a limited time frame. Was Melanie McGuire truly acting alone, or was there an accomplice involved? Maybe it was Jim Flynn, but why would someone go to such lengths for a girl he had a crush on years ago? Yet consider this. It could be someone else, someone closer. A secret affair, perhaps. Was it someone who would do anything, even kill for her?
It is now 2:30 p.m., May 31st, 2005. Brad Miller making an outgoing call to Melanie McGuire. Hello?
What's up?
I've told them everything that I know. But they're, they just don't.
They want you to break.
I mean, if you want us to stick together, I gotta know everything now. Before this goes any further.
What do you mean you have to know everything now?
I mean, there's no other secrets between us, right?
That I can think of.
You swear you had nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
And your children's lives. Because I'm standing by you.
Yeah.
The voice you heard was of Dr. Brad Miller. He was a partner at RMA Associates, and Melanie worked as one of his nurses.
What appealed to you about Brad Miller? He was just very, very tender. I really tried to fight it, but I couldn't fight it.
The affair between them officially began when Melanie was 8 months pregnant with her second child, at least for both of them.
He was so kind. I'd come back to my desk after a long meeting with a patient, and there'd be lunch sitting on my desk waiting for me. There was always a little bit of flirtation, banter back and forth. I was about to go out on maternity leave, and I was sitting actually in his office at his desk. I just mentioned I have a pinched nerve in my neck, and he put his hands on my shoulders and started to rub my back. I really tried to fight it because this was not going to be good. This was not going to be good for anybody, but I couldn't fight it.
After Melanie returned from maternity leave, she and Dr. Miller began a full-blown affair. It appeared as if they were falling deeply in love with each other, despite their marital ties and young children. Investigators uncovered mounting evidence indicating Melanie McGuire's involvement in her husband's murder. Bill's car held a bottle of chloral hydrate, a sedative, along with 2 syringes prescribed by Bradley Miller, who had said the prescription was written in Melanie's handwriting. During the investigation, Jennifer Seymour, a state police computer expert, analyzed the computers and handheld devices belonging to the McGuires, including a desktop computer situated in their apartment. Her examination revealed that between April 11th and April 26, 2004, several concerning topics were searched online. Among the searches were inquiries about undetectable poisons, how to purchase guns illegally, how to commit murder, gun laws, and toxic insulin levels. Among all the evidence, the gun, the internet search, or the affair, one particular detail left people confused. It was the purchase of a $500,000 house, which occurred right before his disappearance.
He was constantly looking at homes. He wanted to end up buying a house before he turned 40.
He did want to move down here to Virginia Beach. We took pictures of houses in our neighborhood, but Melanie just would not hear of it.
They ended up placing a substantial deposit on an impressive home in New Jersey. This residence was quite lavish, with a significant amount of land and carrying a price tag of $500,000. This seemed contradictory. On one hand, Melanie was growing closer to Dr. Miller, but on the other, she was making a major investment in a new property with Bill.
So why were you buying this $500,000 house together then?
The idea for me was we had a chunk of money, cash, that we were putting down on this house. In the past, we'd come to points where we had been in similar situations, and ultimately something would happen and he would go and gamble the money away. I figured this at least was an investment.
On April 28, 2004, they were set to close on the house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Melanie stayed in touch with Dr. Miller throughout, as he pleaded with her not to proceed with the house purchase. He expressed a wish to be with her and build a future together. Melanie assured him she would handle it. After closing on the house, they returned to their rented townhouse. Bill, quite excited, called John Rice, reportedly in a very happy state. Melanie's final conversation that night was with Dr. Miller. She informed him that they had closed on the house and mentioned that Bill was asleep on the couch after having some red wine. Melanie planned to discuss matters with Bill when he woke, intending to request a divorce. Melanie recounted the events as a significant argument between her and Bill, stating that they had a fight in the early hours of the morning, around 3 or 4 o'clock. It all started regarding the house they were purchasing, with Melanie mentioning that she had settled for that particular house. Bill's reaction was immediate and intense, expressing dissatisfaction and stating that it wasn't what he wanted. He mentioned his preference for a cheaper house in Virginia, which Melanie refused, leading to an escalating, heated exchange. Melanie further described that the argument turned physical, specifying that Bill pushed a dryer sheet into her mouth, revealing his fixation with dryer sheets during such moments.
We're still arguing, and there's the laundry basket, and there's a dryer sheet just hanging out of one of the baby's sleeves. He hated them. He thought it was lazy that I wouldn't stand there and put in the liquid fabric softener, and yeah. And it went out of control. This was the type of mother I was, that I would leave this sheet in there for my baby to possibly choke on. Before I know it, I'm up against the wall, and the dryer sheet is being shoved into my throat. And then he just smacked me.
In the face?
Yeah, open hand, because he probably would have broken my cheek if it had been a closed fist. And I looked down, and there's my 2-year-old.
I grabbed the baby and went to the bathroom right behind me and shut the door. I just wanted away from him at that point.
He informed her that he was leaving and wouldn't return, even instructing her to explain to their children why they wouldn't have a father. He communicated this through the bathroom door while he packed and made several trips up and down the stairs, continuously criticizing her. Her final words to him were a plea to stop. After discovering the suitcases, the police were finally on the verge of bringing justice to Bill. One crucial piece of evidence the police were eagerly seeking, yearning for proof of Melanie's involvement in the dismemberment, remained elusive. Despite thoroughly searching her home, they found no blood, no bullets, nothing. There was no direct physical evidence linking her to the murder. Over a year after Bill McGuire's murder, on June 5, 2005, Melanie McGuire was arrested while dropping off her kids at a daycare in Metuchen. She was charged with first-degree murder in what became known as the suitcase killer case. Melanie pleaded not guilty and was released on $750,000 bail. In 2005, a grand jury indicted her on 4 counts, raising her bail to $2.1 million. She was again released. Another indictment later accused her of writing letters that obstructed the investigation. 3 years after the murder, in 2007, Melanie's trial began. The prosecution argued that she killed her husband in 2004 to start a new life with her boyfriend. Lead investigator Prezioso testified that the evidence points to a well-planned murder. Melanie maintained her innocence, stating that her husband was a compulsive gambler who had become increasingly erratic. However, a spokesman for the New Jersey Division of Criminal Justice disputed her characterization, saying that there was no indication that Mr. McGuire was anything more than an occasional gambler. Melanie's defense team argued that the murder and dismemberment could not have happened in the Woodbridge apartment because there was no evidence to support this claim. They highlighted the absence of blood, tissue, or DNA in the apartment, as well as the lack of a bullet or saw marks. Additionally, there were no testimonies from neighbors regarding gunshots or the sound of a power saw. 3 years later, on April 23, 2007, Melanie McGuire, 34, was found guilty of killing William T. McGuire, dismembering his body, packing the pieces in 3 suitcases, and tossing them into the Chesapeake Bay. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 63 years and 9 months. She also received a concurrent 10-year sentence for desecrating human remains and a further 5-year sentence for perjury for lying to a family court judge about her husband's whereabouts after he vanished in 2004. William and Melanie McGuire's 2 sons, whose identities are protected for their privacy and safety, were last seen with their father on April 28, 2004. Melanie dropped the boys, aged 2 and 4, off at their daycare as usual around 8:20 a.m. After their routine, the boys returned home expecting to see their father, but he was nowhere to be found. William and Melanie's sons were placed in the care of Bill's elder sister, Cindy LaGauche, a realtor at the Weichert office in Franklin Lakes. Cindy, along with her husband, pharmacist Bill LaGauche of Wyckoff, New Jersey, were deemed capable of providing a loving and nurturing environment for the boys. They already had 2 adult children of their own, Laura LaGauche and Max LaGauche, and were experienced parents. When the question of custody arose, the 2 boys were sent to live with Cindy and Bill, especially since they were already a close-knit family. After Melanie was convicted of murdering her husband, her family initiated a custody battle with Cindy, but to no avail. As a result, William and Melanie's sons continue to reside in New Jersey with their aunt, uncle, and cousins, the only family they've ever known. In 2007, during Melanie's murder trial, Cindy presented evidence that both of her sister-in-law's children, then aged 5 and 7, had been diagnosed with autism. Cindy had grown concerned about their well-being upon noticing their behavior and had them tested. Due to the protection of their identities, no further information regarding their current status is available. However, it's known that the boys have not had contact with their mother since before her conviction. If you've watched the entire video without missing a moment, you probably have numerous questions about the investigation and arrest. After looking at her history as a nurse and her caring and charismatic nature, it's hard to even consider if someone like Melanie could commit such a heinous crime. The high-profile nature of the case prompted a range of opinions among viewers. Many believe that there are many gaps in the story, beginning with the fact that she doesn't quite appear to be capable of murder. Even if she had the motive, how could this small woman accomplish it all alone? Did someone assist her? Was she unfairly charged? Perhaps the jury overlooked someone, or was the accusation entirely mistaken? If you're pondering these questions, you're not alone. Many people, including criminology professors Megan Sachs and Amy Schlossberg, doubt Melanie McGuire's guilt. They host a podcast, Direct Appeal, questioning her conviction, pointing out that Melanie doesn't fit the typical profile of a murderer.
So you believe an innocent woman is behind bars right now?
Absolutely. I believe this is a case of a wrongful conviction.
So let's talk about some of the questions you raise in your podcast, and let's begin with the gun.
The gun to this day has never been recovered.
The key witness for the prosecution, a forensic ballistics expert, stated that the bullets found in Bill's case were identified as .38 caliber lead cutter bullets.
No one plugged the serial number of my gun into a website to find out what the specifications were. Apparently each gun makes something called lands and grooves.
Lands and grooves are rifling characteristics that are machine pressed into the barrel of a gun. And when the bullet passes through the barrel, the same number of lands and grooves are going to be imprinted essentially onto that bullet.
There were 5 lands and grooves that my weapon was said to have made based on the company's website. The bullets that came out of my husband had 6 lands and grooves.
Subsequently, they found an error on the gun manufacturer's website. What's puzzling is that the website information was altered after the unfortunate incident involving Bill McGuire's murder.
After this trial, to incorporate the possibility that it could have 5 or 6.
Yeah. I thought that was questionable. I think it's very questionable that for years historically it says one thing and then it's updated right after.
Post this, they also discussed the garbage bags found at the McGuire residence and the one Bill was found in.
You can see these lines here. There's a straight line here, this sort of smooth line. There's also 2 other lines close together in basically the exact same position. This indicates that these 2 bags were made at the same facility on the same line within a very close proximity of time.
The investigator highlights that these characteristics indicate that the 2 bags were made at the same facility, on the same production line, and within a very brief time frame. Furthermore, they express confidence in their conclusion, drawing from conducted tests and observed results, affirming that the bags were produced during the same run.
They put on a really good show. And I think when you have props, 2 garbage bags, oh wow, those do look alike. And so what the jurors are listening to sounds like fact, when in reality, it's just someone's expert opinion.
Sachs also emphasizes the physical challenges of dismembering a body and the lack of a believable crime scene. In a video demonstration, they conducted 2 tests. The first was a suitcase weight test, assessing whether Melanie, weighing 118 pounds, could have thrown a suitcase of similar weight, around 80 pounds, across a bridge with a guardrail height of 40 inches. Their findings suggested that a reasonably manageable weight to lift was around 40 pounds, approximately half of Melanie's weight.
There is something else that's significant that you think the jury should have heard more about that was found inside those suitcases.
If you look through the lab reports, page upon page upon page, white hair, brown hair, black hair, animal hair. I think that's indicative that there was animal hair where the dismemberment took place of Bill's body.
You mentioned that you found some animal hairs. Did you find anything that you considered of evidential value?
No.
They looked high and low to connect Melanie to some pet. And once they found that there was no way to connect Melanie to these pet hairs, it became not of evidentiary value.
Why is that? Simply because they don't match your suspects?
Those hairs should have been tested because that's a huge question mark.
Despite a movie about her case coming out, Melanie remains in prison. Despite the attention, she insists she didn't kill her husband or dispose of his body parts in suitcases.
And why would she drive all the way down to Chesapeake with the body parts in the car, thinking, I'm not going to get stopped, I'm not going to break down? What a chance that is. You know, I mean, you can't stop on a bridge and open a window and throw 3 suitcases out.
Can't make anybody believe who's convinced that I've done this, that I didn't. All I can continue to do is tell the truth, and it's not the most flattering truth, but it's the truth.
In the puzzling case of Melanie McGuire and Bill McGuire, questions remain about who committed the crime. Was Melanie rightfully convicted, or were there crucial details missed? If she did commit the crime, could she have acted alone, or was someone else involved? Think again. Do you believe Melanie was guilty? Or are there unanswered questions that could lead to a different conclusion? Join us in exploring this captivating story together. The case may be closed, but the mysteries linger. And before you leave, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mysterious Hook, where we delve into the most intriguing cases that capture the imagination. Don't miss our latest investigations. Hit the notification bell to stay updated.
मैं कि आग लग रही है इसमें, क्या जला रहे हो? मैंने कि मुर्गा जला रहे हो क्या बकरा जला रहे हो? नहीं, मैंने कि भैया, मैंने कि इसमें मुर्दा फूक रहा है. मैं इतनी कह के आकर लौट.
July 2nd, 1995 marks the day when New Delhi, the bustling capital city of India, became a stage for a horror that would haunt the country for ages. Within this vibrant city, a love story took a sinister turn. Tandoor, a clay urn-shaped oven meant for creating culinary delights, became the ominous centerpiece in a gruesome crime. Instead of cooking chicken, a husband would grill his own wife at 500 degrees, and to make it even more gruesome, he applied butter to turn her into ashes. This is India's most infamous true crime story, which unfolded between the prominent areas of Connaught Place and Karol Bagh, situated in New Delhi. The region around Ashoka Road and Janpath Road near Karol Bagh in New Delhi is a bustling neighborhood characterized by its blend of residential serenity and commercial vigor. Known for its diverse community and lively atmosphere, this place offers diverse cultures, traditions, and modern conveniences. Ashoka Road leads directly to the majestic India Gate, while the Janpath area is known for hosting local cuisines and bustling markets. The area boasts a mix of residential complexes, local markets, and small businesses that cater to the daily needs of its residents. It mostly thrives with the presence of various eateries serving delectable local cuisine, adding a flavorful essence to the neighborhood. And one such famous place was Bhagia Barbecue Restaurant in Hotel Ashok Yatri Niwas, which later became the Hotel Indra Prathsa. However, this renowned restaurant was soon to become the center stage for a chilling incident that would later be recognized as the Tandoor Kand, or the Tandoor Case. Around 11:25 p.m. on July 2, 1995, Ashoka Road in Janpath, New Delhi was getting quieter. 2 policemen, Constable Abdul Nazir Kunju and Home Guard Chandler Pal, were patrolling the area. As they got closer to the Ashok Yatri Niwas Hotel, Kunju noticed flames coming from some nearby buildings. Concerned about a potential fire outbreak, the duo swiftly embarked on an investigation. Kunju made his way towards the main entry gate of Yatri Niwas, making a beeline for the front of the Bagia barbecue restaurant, situated on the left, just inside the hotel's main entryway. From this vantage point, he observed flames emanating from the rear kitchen area of Bagia. As he approached, a uniformed security guard intercepted him, already briefed about the situation. The guard explained that the fire originated from ignited waste paper and cardboard near the outdoor tandoor, reassuring Kunju that everything was under control and there was no cause for alarm. Satisfied with the explanation, policemen Kunju and Chandra Pal proceeded to walk away towards Janpath Lane. As they began to move, Anaru Devi, a middle-aged vegetable vendor often seen showcasing her produce beside the Mother Dairy milk booth at the lane's entrance from Ashaka Road, hurriedly approached them.
मैं कि आग लग रही है इसमें क्या जला रहे हो कल लगा रही माँ तू तो बड़ी पंतानी है मैंने कि मुर्गा जला रहे हो क्या बकरा जला रहे हो नहीं अब तू जब बड़ी पंतानी है मैंने कि भैया मैंने कि इसमें मुर्दा फूक रहा है मैं इतनी कह के आकर लौट.
With her voice trembling in fear, Anaru exclaimed about the hotel being on fire. Her panicked outcry had attracted the attention of several men nearby, who also began to raise the alarm. Kunju realized how serious the situation had become upon seeing the size of the fire. The flames were already clearly visible from the lane, showing that it was more than just a small fire, with thick smoke soaring high, reaching to about 30 to 35 feet above Bagia's outer wall on Janpath Lane. Kunju and Chandra hurried back to the closed restaurant's entrance. By that time, Kunju started quietly cursing as he expressed his frustration, mentioning that those involved were attempting to burn the entire hotel down. Kunju then moved beyond the hotel entrance and approached the canvas screen situated in front of the Bagia barbecue. Upon lifting the screen and gazing into the dimly lit restaurant, he encountered a slender man, approximately in his late 20s or early 30s, standing about 5 foot 10 inches tall and attired in a white kurta, a traditional Indian garment. This man casually informed Kunju that they were just burning some old posters and reassured him that the fire was under control. He mentioned that they had taken adequate precautionary measures and there was no reason to worry. Despite the man's reassurance, Constable Kunju remained unconvinced. He left Chandra Pal near the hotel and quickly made his way to a nearby phone booth, only to find it closed. He then jogged towards the police picket situated at the rear of the Western Court Complex, located a couple of 100 meters away. Once there, he urgently relayed a wireless report of the fire to the Connaught Place police station and made calls to the police control room and the fire brigade, requesting immediate assistance. Upon his return to the hotel, Kunju was dismayed to witness that the blaze had escalated during his absence, with thick smoke rising high above the hotel complex. With Chandra accompanying him, they marched towards the entrance of the restaurant and assertively demanded entry to inspect the fire. Once more, the men at the restaurant refused to allow him entry. Determined, Kunju wouldn't be discouraged this time. Pretending to retreat from the Bagia, he and Chandra Pal exchanged secretive words as they walked away together from the front of the hotel. Rushing down Janpath Lane, they swiftly scaled the 7-foot-high wall at the restaurant's rear without hesitation. Clearing the bamboo screen fencing, Kunju managed to enter the covered rear area of the garden restaurant. Without delay, they headed straight for the fire. The fire presented an alarming and disproportionate scene within the kitchen. Fueled by a heap of wooden logs, planks, and assorted materials piled atop the tandoor, it blazed with ferocity. One slender man, the same individual who had earlier dismissed Kunju at the front of the Bagia, was actively fueling the flames using wooden beams and bamboo poles. Another man, dressed in a blue-printed shirt, and a muscular young man stood nearby. At a distance, adjacent to the canvas screen by the hotel's entrance, stood a robustly built man wearing white. Curiously, these individuals appeared entirely indifferent to the foul smell emanating from the inferno. Kunju warned the man stoking the flames, cautioning him about the potential risk of causing a fire that could engulf the entire hotel. Upon being informed by the individual tending to the fire about his affiliation as a Congress Party worker engaged in burning old materials, including posters and waste paper, Kunju remained composed. Instead of being deterred by the political association, he immediately looked around for a bucket. This marked a moment where the young constable truly showcased his determination. Some individuals might have hesitated upon hearing about the political connection, particularly with the influential Congress Party. They might have offered a mild caution about fire safety before ultimately withdrawing. However, Kunju stood firm. He was alarmed by the considerable blaze before him and, alongside Chandra Paul, swiftly gathered any available buckets and containers. They filled these from a nearby kitchen tap and promptly began extinguishing the flames. Soon, Sub-Inspector Rajesh Kumar arrived at the scene just as Kunju and Chandra Paul were diligently working to suppress the fire. Interestingly, unlike the attempt to dismiss a constable earlier, no one dared to send a sub-inspector away. Accompanied by 2 security guards from the main hotel, Rajesh and his constables entered the restaurant and joined Kunju in combating the blaze. Working together, they successfully extinguished the fire within a matter of minutes. The intense flames had ignited certain plastic-coated overhead cables, causing further damage. Carrying along the person seemingly responsible for the mischief, Kunju, Sub-Inspector Rajesh Kumar, and the hotel guards proceeded to investigate the extent of the cable damage. Their objective was to determine whether the fire had spread to the building's first floor. They advanced towards the main lobby of Yatri Niwas, which led to the Coconut Grove restaurant. Ascending 2 flights of stairs, they reached the lower split-level first-floor terrace overlooking the Bagia complex. Constable Kunju leaned over the edge of the mezzanine roof in search of the wires that had caught fire. Instead, he was met with a rush of hot air and foul-smelling folk billowing upwards. To his surprise, he noticed that the fire above the tandoor, which they had previously extinguished, had reignited. The man he had observed earlier in the Bagia, the sturdy individual clad in white, was once again fueling the flames. Kunju's initial alarm transformed into exasperation at the careless disregard for safety displayed by these people. Hurrying to the rear edge of the roof without considering the steep drop below, he leapt down, landing forcefully on the paved rear courtyard of the restaurant. Swiftly advancing towards the fire, he pushed aside the wicket fence obstructing his way and approached the tandoor from the rear. Upon reaching the kitchen area, Kunju discovered that the man in the kurta pajama and his 2 companions had vanished, yet the fire continued to rage. It was at this moment that Kunju noticed a peculiar scent. Amidst the pungent and unpleasant odor, a distinct smell of roasted meat filled the air. However, this scent was not of ordinary food cooking. Rather, it carried the unmistakable and haunting odor of burning flesh. When he examined the oven, instead of finding chicken meat being prepared, they came across something profoundly disturbing. The oven contained a human body, dismembered and partially burnt. This unsettling discovery reverberated throughout the city, leaving its residents deeply disturbed and shocked. Now 2 key questions surfaced. Who might the body have belonged to, and who could have been responsible for this gruesome deed? And so began the quest for information regarding the disturbing Tandoor Kand. The dismembered and burned body parts underwent testing, and upon receiving the results, the victim's identity was unveiled. She was 29-year-old Naina Sahni. Naina, a Congress worker in New Delhi, was married to 34-year-old Sushil Sharma, who was also a youth Congress leader. The initial post-mortem, conducted at Lady Hardinge Medical College in Delhi, concluded that the cause of death was burn injuries. Subsequently, a second post-mortem was ordered by the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. This examination was carried out by a team of 3 doctors from different hospitals, led by T.D. Dogra. During this examination, 2 bullets were discovered in the head and neck region, leading the conclusion that the cause of death was due to firearm injuries. Now, as per protocol, the police intended to meet with Sushil Sharma, but he was nowhere to be located. However, the same fate did not befall the man who was involved in burning the remains at the hotel. The individual responsible for burning the remains was apprehended and identified as Keshav Kumar, the restaurant manager of the Bagia Hotel. It didn't take long for him to disclose the identity of the other person involved, who indeed turned out to be Naina's husband, Sushil Kumar. The case seemed close to resolution almost immediately upon the initial disclosures. Yet the grim and sinister nature of this case cast a long shadow over the city, leaving a haunting impact for a prolonged period. A few days later, on July 10, 1995, Sushil Sharma surrendered. Now all that remained was to uncover the events that transpired on the day Naina was killed and ensure that justice was served. During the interrogation, it was disclosed that Sushil and his wife Naina had a friend named Matlub Karim. Matlub and Naina had been classmates and were colleagues in the Congress Party, sharing a close bond. However, Sushil disapproved of Naina's friendship with Matlub. Arguments frequently arose between the couple over this issue, but his possessiveness took a much darker turn on the night of July 2, 1995. On that tragic night, upon returning home, Sushil encountered Naina conversing on the phone while consuming alcohol. As Naina noticed Sushil's presence, she ended the call abruptly. In a fit of anger, Sushil redialed the phone and discovered Matlub on the other end of the line. Enraged beyond control, and despite Naina's attempts to explain, Sushil fatally shot her. Subsequently, he wrapped the body in a plastic bag, placed it in the trunk of his Maruti 800 car, and proceeded to transport it to the Bagia barbecue restaurant, and conspired with the restaurant manager, Keshav Kumar, to dispose of it. Naina's body was dismembered and then incinerated in a tandoor oven. With this information gathered, along with a few DNA tests to confirm the killer's identity, Sushil Sharma was soon to face the legal proceedings in court. The Delhi police conducted an investigation into the case and submitted a charge sheet on July 27, 1995 in a sessions court. Subsequently, on November 7, 2003, Sushil Sharma was sentenced to death, while the restaurant manager, Keshav Kumar, received 7 years of rigorous imprisonment. Sushil appealed against the district court's verdict in the Delhi High Court, yet the High Court upheld the decisions made by the lower courts. His death sentence was subsequently confirmed by the Delhi High Court in 2007. However, in 2013, the Supreme Court commuted his death sentence, citing the absence of evidence that Sushil had dismembered his wife's body. On October 8, 2013, a 3-judge bench consisting of Chief Justice Satya Sivam and Justices Ranjana Desai and Ranjan Gogi upheld Sharma's conviction.
There is relief for Sushil Sharma. The Supreme Court has in fact commuted the death sentence to life. It's going to be a life term now for Sushil Sharma. This, of course, is the extremely infamous 1995 Tandoor case where the victim was Naina Sharma, and now the Supreme Court has commuted the death penalty to a life term.
The court reduced his death sentence to life imprisonment due to Sushil's lack of a prior criminal record and the nature of the crime. Although both the trial court and the High Court had ordered Sushil Sharma's execution, the Supreme Court modified the sentence, stating, "It is not a crime against society, but a crime committed due to his strained relationship with his wife." On December 21, 2018, the Delhi High Court issued an order for the immediate release of Sushil Sharma. The court questioned whether a person could be detained indefinitely for a murder offense even after completing a designated sentence. However, by that time, Sushil had already been released after serving 23 years in jail. According to Sushil, if he hadn't committed the crime, he believed he could have potentially become a union minister. After his release from jail, Sushil appeared to have changed as a person. Yet one cannot really know the truth that lurks beneath the superficial demeanor.
कि 90% लोग हालात को कंट्रोल नहीं, उनको मालूम नहीं हालात को कैसे कंट्रोल करना है. अगर वो गलत कर गए तो वो क्राइम हो गया, और वो ठीक कर गए तो सह गए, चुप लगा गए तो वो क्राइम नहीं हुआ. तो जेल में चुप रहना सिखाते हैं, जेल में डिसिप्लिन में रहना सिखाते हैं. तो महात्मा गांधी का एक कोट मैंने पढ़ा जेल में, उनकी कोटिंग पढ़ी कि अगर जैसे हम जेल में रहते हैं, अगर वैसे हम बाहर रहें तो कोई समस्या कभी नहीं होगी.
When questioned about the dismemberment of Naina's body after the murder and the events of that night, here's what Sushil had to say.
काफ़ी बातें सामने आई. इसमें कहा जाता है कि टुकड़े किए गए, उसका तंदूर में जलाया गया, काफ़ी चीज़ें आई. उस टाइम को अगर आप कभी याद करते होंगे तो आपको स्थिति याद आती होगी क्या हुआ था और किस तरह से क्या था. क्या ये टुकड़े करने वाली बात को आप मानते हैं या फिर सारी चीज़ें?
सर, वो टुकड़े वाली बात तो गलत है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने भी उसको मना कर दिया कि उसके बॉडी के कोई टुकड़े नहीं हुए थे. और जब क्राइम हो जाता है तो क्राइम को बचाने की कोशिश में आदमी और गलतियां करता जाता है। क्राइम जैसे हो जाए, जब हो जाए, उसको स्वीकार कर लेना चाहिए, उसको तुरंत एक्सेप्ट कर लेंगे तो वो क्राइम भी कभी नहीं मतलब क्राइम आगे नहीं बढ़ेगा, और जितना आपसे हो गया उसकी आप सज़ा भुगतेंगे, जुर्माना जो होगा।
थोड़ा जिक्र करूंगा सर, अगर याद हो, माफ़ी चाहूँगा इस बात के लिए, पर अगर क्या हुआ था उस
सर
दिन?
मैंने आपको बताया कि वो ऑल ड्यू टू पोजेशन में, आप जब आदमी पजेसिव होता है किसी भी सिचुएशन में, तो वो मेरे जैसी सिचुएशन में आ जाता है। तो वो मेरी जो पजेसिवनेस थी, वो जेल में जाने के बाद मैंने जो जेल में पसीना मेरा निकला है 24 साल में, उसमें वो सारी चीज़ें निकल के बह गई हैं।
Regarding his future plans, despite once being a full-fledged politician, he stated that he would not pursue his career in that direction anymore and instead had different ideas in mind.
आगे क्या प्लानिंग है सर आपकी? क्या राजनीति से जुड़ेंगे या फिर कुछ और सोचा है आपने?
नहीं सर, अभी राजनीति का तो दूर दूर तक कहीं बिल्कुल भी दिमाग में नहीं है, और राजनीति की नहीं, लेकिन सामाजिक में सबसे पहले तो मेरे को रोड रेश पे कुछ चीज़ें मेरे दिमाग में हैं, उसके लिए मैं कुछ काम करूंगा, और एक मैरिजेस के अंदर काउंसलिंग मस्ट करने के लिए भी मैं कुछ काम करूंगा कि मैरिजेस से पहले 3-3 महीने की लड़का लड़की काउंसलिंग होनी चाहिए, जिससे हम मैरिजेस को बचा सकें। जैसी सिचुएशन मैं फंसा हूँ, वो तो वर्स्ट सिचुएशन है, उसमें कम से कम कोई और ना फंसे।
On the other hand, the hero who made justice possible, policeman Kunju's life had taken a turn. Kunju, speaking to Times of India, mentioned that he had received only 5 rupees as his reward for his brave actions. Despite making headlines in various media outlets, he now sees the incident as a brief moment of attention. Kunju claimed that the Delhi police did not acknowledge or value his policing abilities, quick response, and vigilance. He opted for voluntary retirement in 2012 and relocated to Kerala to care for his unwell mother. The 51-year-old retired officer shared that while he received an out-of-turn promotion, he was deprived of all the accompanying benefits associated with it. He mentioned being denied a salary increase under the 6th Pay Commission, highlighting that even lower-ranked constables who joined after him were earning more. Despite holding the position of head constable, Kunju stated that his requests were consistently rejected. On the night of the discovery, Kunju discovered a blood-stained plastic bag nearby containing the remaining parts of Naina's body, and was threatened by Sushil and Keshav Kumar. Despite this threat, Kunju remained steadfast and fulfilled his duties, including attending court proceedings even after his retirement. His story shows that sometimes even the just are treated poorly when they go against those in power. Do you believe that Sushil shot Naina due to insecurity, or was there something else? Do you think the punishment he received was fitting, or should it have been a death sentence? Let us know your opinion. We would love to hear from you. And if you have any case in mind that you want us to cover, feel free to drop your suggestions in the comment section. Subscribe to our channel, Mysterious 7, to be the first to uncover disturbing cases from around the world. Until next time, stay safe. One day, on May 3rd, 2019, 17-year-old Ellie Gould chose to opt for a day of solo study, skipping her usual class. Little did they know, the silence behind her closed door held a chilling secret. When her father returned home, he expected her usual chirpy greeting, only to find an unsettling void. The kitchen became a scene straight out of a nightmare.
We're going to talk now about Ellie Gould. She was a bright, popular sixth form student who should have turned 18 last week, but in May, she was murdered in her own home.
There lay Ellie, not the vibrant girl her father knew, but a still figure in a crimson pool with a knife near her arms and stab wounds at her throat. Her eyes, once mirrors of determination, stared blankly ahead. The air thickened with questions. Why would Ellie, a young girl who chased her dreams, take her own life? But there was more to this story than what met the eyes initially. A silver Ford Fiesta had been sighted near Ellie's home. Whispers were going around of another chilling presence in the house before Ellie bid her final goodbye. Who was this unseen figure? Were they involved in killing Ellie? The vital question that remained was whether this was an act of self-harm or a gruesome murder. Caen, Wiltshire, is a small, peaceful town in southwestern England surrounded by beautiful hills. The air here is filled with the smell of freshly cut grass. The River Marden flows through its banks lined with willow trees. Cobbled streets wind through stone cottages adorned with blooming window boxes. The town square, shaded by ancient oak trees, hosts a weekly market with lively exchanges. In this serene setting, Ellie thrived. Surrounded by the familiar sounds of church bells and distant trains, Kane wasn't just a pretty setting, played a role in Ellie's story, shaping her dreams and goals with its simple charm. Ellie was born on the 6th of February 2002 to parents Carol Gould and Matthew Gould, both in their late 40s.
I really want to know a bit more about Ellie. What was she like as a child?
Very happy, always giggling. She had a passion for animals. That was her thing. Yeah, very, very gentle girl. She had guinea pigs that she looked after so carefully. And then she moved on to horses.
She liked horses?
A lot of happy memories of those times when we used to ride out the Wiltshire countryside and her saying, "It's all right, Mum, we won't go fast." And I'd be going, "Oh, please slow down, I don't want to go fast."
As a Year 12 student at Hardenhuis School, she approached her A-levels with ambition shining in her eyes. Yet Ellie wasn't just about studying and exams. She found peace in the open fields, riding her beloved horse. She was a natural at it, and even had dreams of joining the mounted police.
She had some lessons and then she got hooked and then started to become quite a good rider, I suppose, for a youngster.
But beyond trophies and accolades, Ellie was an integral part of her family's world.
She was very much like a mother. She was just a lovely, my father would always say that, a lovely child. Knew her own mind from a very young age, very determined. Yeah, she was great fun, and she obviously grew up into a beautiful, kind, loving young lady.
Contemporaries knew Ellie as a true friend, someone who'd listen to your deepest secrets and make you laugh till your sides hurt.
Had all come from different groups, and it was just the first day of school, and I remember just saying, "Oh, let's go and sit with Ellie and Tilda," and so we went and we sat with them, and we've just been sat together ever since and became really close friends quite quickly.
As our school year progressed, we did begin making friends with more people, so more boys joined our group. We'd spend every minute that we could together, and we just really bonded over the silliest things.
Ellie was not only great with her friends, but her cousins too.
We're close, we see a lot of each other. She was very close to her cousins. They're all of the similar age, so they've all gone through the same milestones together. And when we see them now, there's one man down, she's missing.
One of her closest cousins was 17-year-old Jess Vine. They were inseparable.
They were like sisters. It was almost like we had twins in the family. And from day one, they were as thick as thieves. Even before they could start crawling, you'd put them in their car seats together and they'd sit there and they'd be talking in baby language, totally gabbling away in baby language with each other.
Ellie was born on the 6th of February 2002, and I was born 4 weeks later on the 6th of March. So being that exact month apart, inevitably we were very close because we were so close in age, and also kind of the two only girls, like within the cousins. And we also just got on really well.
She also wanted to study psychology. Those A-levels were stepping stones to understanding the complexities of the human mind, the good, the bad, and the fascinating gray areas in between. She wanted to help people, see what made them tick, and make the world a little brighter. But life took an unexpected turn for Ellie. No one could have fathomed the gruesome way she was taken away. On May 3rd, 2019, Ellie Gould chose to study at home for her A-levels instead of going to school.
It was on the morning when we had a conversation about after school we were planning to go up to the stables and she was going to do some jumping in the school. That's what she said she wanted to do. My husband, he just rang me hysterical and said, "Carol, you've got to come home, Ellie's had an accident." I just dropped everything. I just kept thinking, what's she done? What's she done?
But this day turned out to be different. When her dad, Matthew Gould, came back from work, everything changed. The usual routine and laughter disappeared, replaced by a silence that lingered in the house forever.
So I pull up in the drive, Ellie's car, a small red car that she was learning to drive in was on the drive. So I come into the house, walk into the kitchen, put my phone and wallet down on the table. And then from the corner of my eye, I see Ellie's legs on the kitchen floor, island unit in the middle, and her legs just poking out from the side of it. First thoughts were, she's fallen. She's banged her head, and she's hurt herself. I bent down to see if she's okay, and she was cold. She was very cold. She was stiff. I couldn't really move her. So I just thought she'd climbed up onto the worktop to get something out of the cupboard, and fallen and banged her head. And I take two, and I see there's a lot of blood splatters around that end of the kitchen, which wouldn't have come from a fall. But I couldn't compute then whether, what had happened. I was panicked. So I immediately rang for an ambulance. They tried to tell me how to resuscitate her. And I told them that it was pointless. I believe she was dead. It was horrific.
Matthew, Ellie's dad, panicked and called for the ambulance. In a state of shock, he then reached out to Carol, Ellie's mother, not knowing what to do next or how to handle what he had just witnessed. His once vibrant daughter now lay on the floor, eyes open and emotionless, her lovely face scarred, and her laughter gone.
I remember seeing an ambulance on the drive, and then I saw Matt just sobbing. And as I ran towards Matt, a policeman stopped me and asked me who I was. And I said, I'm Ellie's mother, what's happened? And then I looked at Matt, and he just said, she's died.
The Wiltshire police investigation revealed that Ellie had been lying lifeless in her kitchen for at least 4 hours. Shockingly, she had suffered 13 separate stab wounds to her neck and showed signs of strangulation. The manner of the stabbing was so aggressive and disturbing that even the best surgeons or any form of first aid wouldn't have been able to save her. It was a tragic and horrifying situation beyond help. The police quickly concluded that Ellie couldn't have done this to herself, and the chance of a stranger being responsible was very slim. Everything in the house remained undisturbed, leading them to believe it wasn't an outsider.
Your mind goes blank anyway, you're in such shock. So we were sat in the back of a police car, and they very quickly started to ask us who her friends were and what her plans were for that day. And I just remember my mind going blank. I couldn't remember her friends' names. I couldn't remember their surnames. The information I was given to the police was so sketchy. I can't believe they managed to piece things together, really.
The police were baffled as the evidence suggested that it wasn't an outsider. They started exploring closer circles, family, friends, or someone known to Ellie. The motive remained a mystery, making this case even more complicated.
When you hear about the nature of the injuries, the amount of blood, and you understand the family circumstances, Ellie came from a very loving family, very popular at school, no indications to suggest that she would she would take her own life. And then you automatically start hypothesizing that obviously this is likely to be a homicide until such time that you can disprove either way.
Her parents, still bewildered, initially considered the possibility that Ellie may have fallen accidentally from a chair or may have caused harm to herself unknowingly.
The police that were looking after us came in and said, we have an update. We're investigating a murder inquiry. And at that point, I felt like I'd been thrown against a wall and thought, a murder? Murder inquiry? Ellie was just loved by so many people. She didn't have any enemies. Who on earth would murder our dear Ellie? Who would do that?
However, Matthew, her father, paused and reconsidered the entire scene. Perhaps he sensed that something was amiss or realized that there might be more to the situation than initially thought.
And then at one point Matt said, no, Carol, no, there was just too much blood. Too much blood. And then you just can't imagine what what had happened at all.
The breakthrough came when a neighbor provided a crucial lead. They had seen a slim, unidentified male visitor at Ellie's house earlier that day. Though they didn't catch a glimpse of the person's face, this description became the focus of the police investigation. The hunt for this mysterious young man began, marking a significant turn in the case. As soon as they caught wind of this lead, DS Jim Taylor, the investigator, and his team swiftly moved to interview all of Ellie's friends. They started with Ellie Welling, a 17-year-old classmate and friend of Ellie Gould. Ellie Welling was supposed to pick Ellie Gould up on the day of her tragic death, May 3rd, 2019.
I was at my boyfriend's house and I'd got a call from my dad to say, oh, Ellie, you need to come home now. We've got police officers at the house. And straight away I started to panic and I thought, oh God, what have I done? And I finally got home. They took me into my living room and they just started asking me questions about Ellie. And that day I was supposed to be picking her up to take her into school, but she had messaged me in the morning to say, don't worry about picking me up. So I was just sort of giving them the answers, but not really panicking, just more nervous of being questioned by the police. It wasn't until they said that, Ellie had died that I completely broke down and didn't know what to do with myself.
After conversing with Ellie's friends, the police hit a dead end. However, their attention was drawn to an unusual vehicle that was seen approaching Ellie's residence. This car was out of place in the neighborhood and showed up on surveillance cameras shortly after Ellie's demise. Now, to push the investigation ahead, the police needed Ellie's parents to point to anyone they suspected among her friends. But because Ellie's parents were familiar with all her friends, they couldn't think of anyone right away. Then, the police directly asked if Ellie had a romantic relationship, and that's when it clicked for Ellie's parents. They mentioned 18-year-old Thomas Griffiths. Thomas Griffiths, an 18-year-old A-level student, served as a rugby player for the premier team and held the esteemed position of a prefect at Hardenhoy School in Chappenham, Wiltshire. He came from a respectable family and was also someone who worked hard to earn the prospects of having a bright future ahead of him. Ellie knew him since the 7th grade and had a huge crush on him, so undoubtedly she was very excited when they finally entered into a relationship.
She'd fancied him for quite a while, actually, before we joined sixth form. Him and her had a weird sort of on and off thing in lower school, sort of around year 10 and year 11. And then when we finally joined sixth form, it turned into a relationship. It was only Tom and Ellie that they were the only romantic relationship in our group.
They officially started dating in January 2019, and their connection flowed smoothly, marking Thomas as Ellie's first boyfriend. Ellie's parents were well informed about every aspect of her life, so inevitably, she confided in her mum about Griffith.
She told me one day after school that a boy had asked her out, and she seemed flattered. She was quite bubbly. I said, this boy's asked me out, Mum. And I said, oh, that's nice. What's he called? And obviously asked a few questions about him. And I felt reassured that he was known to them. He was from Derry Hill. He knew the sons of good friends of ours. So I just thought, that's probably a good choice.
While her parents wished she'd prioritize her studies over boys, they also understood the fragility of teenage love, something they aimed to navigate carefully. Despite their preference for her focus on schooling, they agreed to let her date. However, they insisted on meeting Thomas and invited him over for dinner to become better acquainted with him. One evening, as they sat in the kitchen having dinner, Ellie's parents kept a close eye on Thomas as they tried to get an idea of his character.
Well, from my point of view, when he came and ate with us a few times, he had nothing really to say. Didn't hold his knife and fork properly. He's just a bit slovenly round the table. Yeah, I do. He sit at the table properly. But he didn't. Nothing much to say. He wasn't outgoing enough.
Although there weren't any obvious red flags, he was pretty quiet and seemed introverted. They thought it was probably due to his young age and the nerves of meeting Ellie's family. Understanding and supportive, Ellie's parents were keen on granting her space. Knowing she was a bright and independent child, However, they observed Thomas and quietly wondered as to why Ellie chose someone who didn't quite seem to match her. Despite their certainty that Ellie and Thomas were incompatible, they held back from expressing their thoughts. Respecting Ellie's judgment, hoping for Ellie's happiness, they decided to give Thomas a chance. Thomas had even joined the celebration of Ellie's 17th birthday right in their own kitchen on the 6th of February 2019. It was a moment where her parents warmly welcomed him into their home and extended gestures of affection and acceptance toward him. The honeymoon phase of Ellie and Thomas's relationship didn't last long. 3 months in, cracks began to show. Ellie, who was initially swept off her feet, felt her independence suffocated under Thomas's constant need for her. He craved her presence 24/7, and the spark of excitement morphed into a smothering clinginess. Any attempt of hers to meet friends or prioritize her A-levels was met with grumpy disapproval. The future Thomas envisioned, sprinkled with talk of marriage, clashed wildly with Ellie's desire for space and growth. Their dreams for their relationship were running on parallel tracks, destined to collide. Ellie, who yearned for freedom and a chance to be herself, felt trapped in a commitment she wasn't ready for.
So as Mox approached, I think she sort of realised she didn't need or want a boyfriend. She decided that actually friends and education was more important to her than having that one single person in her life. So she sort of decided to focus more on revision and, mingling with the girls a bit more.
The once picture-perfect romance had become a struggle to balance expectations and maintain her own identity. She felt she wasn't ready for a serious relationship and wanted to focus on school, especially her upcoming exams. In early May 2019, Ellie informed her mom about her intention to end things with Thomas. Unsurprised by the news, her mom inquired if there was a specific reason or if Ellie needed to talk. Ellie reassured her mom that nothing had happened, and she simply wanted to stay single for a while. She urged her mom not to worry and that she had everything under control. Later, Ellie went to her room and broke up with Thomas through text. Thomas persistently denied the breakup and professed his love along with their compatibility. But Ellie stood strong on her decision. Sharing the news of their breakup with friends on May 2nd, 2019, she knew Thomas might feel upset, but hoped they could still remain friends. The following day, when police discovered Ellie in their kitchen, doubts arose about whether Thomas, an A-level student, could even possess the capability for such a thing. On the night of May 2nd, 2019, Ellie asked her parents if she could stay home the next morning because she didn't have classes until the afternoon. She planned to study for her exams before heading to school in the afternoon for her history class.
On the Friday morning, it was just a normal morning. She was eating cereal. I was about to go to work. She'd normally have gone into school on the Friday morning, but she didn't have any lessons. So she decided to stay at home and revise.
The next morning, on May 3rd, 2019, she arranged for a friend, Ellie Welling, to pick her up at 12 p.m. to go to school together. On that day, Griffith's mother dropped him off at Hardenhoish School in Chippenham, where both he and Ellie were enrolled as sixth formers. Thomas entered the school cafeteria and inquired with Ellie's friends about her whereabouts. He had been searching for her since morning, eager to discuss the breakup they had the previous evening. When he got to know that Ellie wasn't in school, quickly decided to leave. Thomas clearly lied to inform a teacher that he wasn't feeling well and made his way to the nearby bus station as he headed back home. On reaching home, he swiftly changed his attire. He wore a black hoodie and different sneakers. However, as he prepared to leave, his mother unexpectedly returned home. He panicked and quickly hid in a cupboard until she left. When his mom left and he was by himself, Thomas took the spare car keys and drove to Ellie's house, which was about a 10-minute drive. When he got there, he knocked on her front door, wanting to talk to her. It's said that they argued in the kitchen when Thomas understood Ellie was serious about breaking up. In the middle of the argument, he started choking Ellie when she tried hard to protect herself. Even though she fought back, Thomas didn't stop, and Ellie passed out. He took a knife from the kitchen and stabbed Ellie in her neck, not once, but 13 times, even though she couldn't fight back. When he saw she was no longer moving, he washed the knife to remove his fingerprints. Then he made it look like Ellie hurt herself and arranged things in a way that seemed like she did it. After that, he cleaned up where it happened and then used Ellie's phone to text a friend while pretending to be her. He did this to make sure no one found Ellie's body until much later in the day. As Ellie fought to protect herself, she accidentally scratched Thomas on his face and neck. When Thomas saw these marks, he came up with a plan to cover up what he had done. He told his friends in a group chat that he was really upset because of the breakup, and even said he was hurting himself on purpose, then sent messages to Ellie's phone, as if he was unaware of anything unusual, and suggested that they meet up to talk about their relationship. Police went to Thomas's house to inquire with him about Ellie. They immediately noticed his neck, which had fresh scratch marks that Ellie left on him when he had ruthlessly murdered her. Thomas denied having anything to do with Ellie's murder, but police knew there was more to the story. Examining the family's Wi-Fi router settings, investigators discovered Thomas's phone disconnected from the home network soon after he returned from school on the morning of May 3rd. It remained offline for several hours, reconnecting only after 12 p.m. Suspecting this time frame aligned with Ellie's murder, they scrutinized surveillance footage around Ellie's residence to gather more information. At 11:56, a passing bus's CCTV recorded a silver Ford Fiesta departing from Ellie's neighborhood. The vehicle's registration number was visible, leading the police to trace it back to the Griffiths family. As no other family member was at home at the time, it strongly implicated Thomas as the driver. Despite this evidence, Thomas persistently denied any role in Ellie's murder or being present at the crime scene. Upon further scrutiny of the family's Wi-Fi router, police discovered that Thomas's phone connected to the home network after 12 p.m., only to disconnect for an 18-minute window. The police turned their attention to the surroundings and identified a nearby wooded area. Walking out of Thomas's front door, they precisely timed a 9-minute walk towards the woods. Upon reaching the 9-minute mark, they halted and scrutinized the area. Swiftly, they uncovered a black bin liner that contained blood-stained napkins, clothes, and towels, later confirmed to hold Ellie's DNA. From the search in Thomas's room, investigators discovered a pair of black sneakers that contained Ellie's blood, and that added on to the mounting evidence. Subsequently, Thomas was arrested and charged with the murder of Ellie Gould. In August 2019, Thomas confessed his intent to plead guilty to the crime. He recounted visiting Ellie's home on the morning of May 2nd, admitting to an argument and alleging a blackout, claiming inability to recollect subsequent events. In a heart-wrenching statement, Ellie's mother, Carol, expressed the family's trust in Griffith, recalling how they welcomed him into their home, even celebrating Ellie's birthday together. She painfully described the unimaginable act of holding Ellie's cold hand after her murder, a pain no parent should endure.
On the Sunday, we were picked up and driven to the mortuary to see Ellie. They told us that they had to put plasters over her neck so that we couldn't see the stab wounds, all 13 of them. But she looked at peace. We put a rose on her. Rose is her middle name. And it was heartbreaking. As I said before, no mother should ever hold the cold hand of their murdered child. That is wrong. That is disgusting. That is horrific. And yeah, it was awful.
Initially, she couldn't believe Griffiths, the innocent boy who loved their daughter, would harm Ellie.
My mum's phone was ringing and the caller ID said that it was Carol, and my mum went out into the hall to pick up her phone, and I could tell quite quickly from what I could overhear that something was really wrong. I can just remember my mum saying, I'm so sorry, Carol, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say, but I'll go and tell Mum and Dad. And then my mum got off the phone and just said, Matt's come home from work and he's found Ellie dead. Sorry.
Matthew, Ellie's dad, described how the haunting image of her motionless body continuously disturbed his mind and affected his sleep and everyday routines. In court, it came to light that Griffiths, driven by Ellie's rejection, violently assaulted her. The autopsy indicated initial incapacitation from pressure on her neck, followed by over a dozen knife wounds. Before fleeing, Griffith staged the scene and placed Ellie's hand on the knife that he left near her neck to deceive investigators. He even tried to disguise the scratches on his face as self-inflicted, fabricating anxious messages to his friends.
I didn't believe he knew the code. We believe when Ellie was dead, he used her fingerprint to open up her phone to send a message to Ellie Welling to stop her coming here.
But the most chilling thing he did was he put the knife in Ellie's hand and raised her arm to her neck and reinserted the knife into a wound in her neck to try and make it look like she had killed herself. That is one hell of a monster. That is an evil psychopath. And then he calmly walked out of here as if nothing had happened and continued to try and pervert the course of justice and hide the evidence.
In November 2019, the Bristol Crown Court sentenced Thomas Griffiths to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 12 years. In court, a letter of apology from Griffiths was read aloud. Ellie's mother stared at Thomas and shook her head. Considering his age as a mitigating factor, as UK law doesn't permit life sentences for those under 18, the court also noted that his use of a knife from the victim's household doesn't suggest premeditation. Thomas Griffiths would become eligible for parole in 2031 at the age of 29. Ellie Gould's story was a heart-wrenching reminder of life's fragility and the cruel theft of dreams. Her hopes, love, and future were stolen. Besides, her plight highlighted the complexities within seemingly perfect relationships. The sadness of losing Ellie and the relentless pursuit of justice served as a cautionary tale for us to be mindful about those whom we let into our lives. In a broader context, Carol Gould's push for tougher sentences in cases like Ellie's sparked essential conversations about domestic violence and sentencing for young offenders. Carol's initiative, Ellie's Law, sought fairness in sentencing, addressing the imbalance between those who bring weapons and those who use found weapons in terrible acts, and for teenage murderers. After 2 tireless campaigns by Ellie's mother Carol and her family, they found victory after 2 years. This new legislation meant that teenage killers would now face potential sentences of up to 27 years, and thus brought a sense of relief to those who fought so hard for justice.
They buried that boy so fast, I guess to keep from people knowing what happened to him.
They put him into that river and let him stay there all night long.
On January 2nd, 1944, 15-year-old Willie Howard experienced a sudden and heart-wrenching moment when 3 white men forcefully entered the house armed with guns and other weapons. It was really shocking for Lula Howard, his mother, who was alone at home and frightened about what was happening. She begged with all her heart to save her son, but the men heartlessly took Willie from their home. Even more shocking is that they took his dad, James, and brought them to the Suwannee River. In a moment that painfully revealed the depths of his father's helplessness, when Willie looked at him, who was crying and couldn't help but witness his son jumping into the river. All James could say to his son were these last words, "I cannot do anything for you now. I'm glad I have belonged to the church and prayed for you." So why did those men abduct Willie Howard? And what could Lula possibly do when the white men left the house? It all started in Suwannee County, Florida, back in 1858, when the people there, with a population of 44,485, decided to make it official and called it a Charter Day on December 21, 1858. Later, they set up Live Oak in 1863, naming it after those giant oak trees, giving travelers some cool shade. This place eventually became the county's main hub. Tucked away in the soil-rich panhandle, it was part of the Florida Black Belt, where farming was the real deal, cotton was the star, and lots of African-American farm workers were in demand. One such ordinary African-American man, Willie Howard, ended up caught in the crossfire of some seriously messed up racism. But who was Willie, and what went down with him? To figure that out, we need to dig into the nitty-gritty details of the events from the very start. When Willie James Howard, a 15-year-old boy, was born on July 13, 1928, down in Suwannee County, Florida, he was the only son of James and Lula Howard, and they loved him the most. When Willie was little, he was a super smart, cheerful, and talented guy. He was a sophomore in Florida high school, and his friends knew him as the boy with some serious singing skills. Willie was the really happy, likable, and talented kid that anyone wants as a friend. He was all about staying clean, looking sharp, and being well dressed. The boy was defined for his politeness. He showed respect to everyone, from his pals to the older folks. Plus, he had this heart of gold that made a bunch of girls in his community crush on him. A retired public school at the African American school that Willie attended, La Francis Stevens, painted a picture of Willie as an extremely respectful and polite guy, a genuinely nice young man. According to her, if he spotted you approaching, he'd step aside with courtesy. Even though La Francis didn't get to teach him because she was all about teaching girls back then, she couldn't help but notice his cheerful spirit and melodic talents. Willie lived with his mother and father, and even though they both had jobs, it wasn't easy for them to buy fancy clothes and shoes for him. It also made them feel sad, as Willie loved dressing up and sometimes resorting to asking other people for clothes. Despite his parents working hard, getting those snazzy outfits for Willie was a bit of a challenge. For such a bright and widely loved boy, he and his parents lived humbly and peacefully. Now, because of his habit of dressing up and being a polite and respectful man in 1943, when he was just 15, he landed a seasonal job during the Christmas holidays. It was at Van Priest 5 and Dime store in downtown Live Oak as a delivery boy, spreading holiday cheer with his deliveries. So back in the day, it was kind of a big deal for an African-American boy like Willie to score a job inside a store and do the deliveries. That spot wasn't exactly the go-to place for hiring African-American folks because of the not-so-friendly racist ideology floating around. Surprisingly, the store also had its share of Caucasian workers, and Willie was breaking the stereotype because he didn't look like the typical poor African-American person from his neighborhood or in the Deep South at the time. Now, at one point, when Willie was working at the store, he became really infatuated with a 17-year-old white girl who worked there by the name of Cynthia Goff. Willie, the quiet observer, used to watch Cynthia from afar, but never gathered the courage to talk to her. Now Willie, being his always nice self, decided to spread some holiday cheer. It was the festive season, and everyone was in a joyful mood with family and friends. So Willie took a sweet initiative and sent Christmas cards to all the female co-workers at Van Priest store, wishing them health and happiness. So after spreading the joy with Christmas cards for everyone, Willie was on cloud 9, but his happiness didn't last long. Why? Well, it turned out that one of the store employees spilled the beans that Cynthia, the girl Willie had a crush on, was actually upset about getting a card from him. When Willie heard that Cynthia was upset, he got restless because he never wanted her to feel down. In an attempt to fix things, he decided to send her a personal letter. But little did he know, this well-intentioned move would turn out to be the biggest mistake of his life. In the letter he wrote, "Dear friend, just a few lines to let you hear from me. I am well and hope you are the same. This is what I said on that Christmas card. From WJH with L. I hope you'll understand what I mean. That is what I said now. Please don't get angry with me, because you can never tell what may get in somebody. I did not put it in there myself. God did. I can't help what he does, can I? I know you don't think much about our kind of people, but we don't hate you all. We want to be your friends, but you won't let us. Please don't let anybody see this. I hope I haven't made you mad. If I did, tell me about it, and I'll forget about it. I wish this was a northern state. I guess you call me fresh. Write and tell me what you think of me, good or bad. Sincerely yours, with L, from YKW, to Cynthia Goff. I love your name, I love your voice. For a SH, you are my choice." In the letter to Cynthia, Willie spilled his feelings, sounding like he was asking her to be friends. He wrote, "I know you don't think much of our kind of people, but we don't hate you. We want to be your friend." It's like he sensed that Cynthia might not be too keen on hanging out with people like him. But Willie was still hopeful. Even if Cynthia hadn't been the friendliest to people of his race, Willie, being the hopeful romantic, didn't want to give up on trying because he really liked her. So at 15, Willie had a pretty clear picture of what he wanted in life, and he understood every word he wrote in that letter. It also gives us a peek into Willie's mindset and a glimpse of how some people, not just in his town but all over the country, were thinking during those times. But one thing Willie probably didn't know was that Cynthia's dad was Alex Goff, a respected former member of the Florida House of Representatives. Now, we're not sure if Cynthia told about the letter or if Mr. Goff found the letter himself, but on January 2, 1944, when he read Willie's letter that he gave to Cynthia, he got seriously angry. Mr. Goff wasn't exactly the hang out with any African American kind of person. Imagine his shock when he found out that an African American guy, Willie, had written a letter to his daughter. For Mr. Goff, this was like a total challenge to him and almost a crime in his eyes. So, being extremely furious, he rounded up his friends, Reginald H. Scott and Selden B. McCullers, and the three of them decided to pay Willie a visit at his house, supposedly to question him about the letter. But they weren't just armed with questions. They were also armed with guns and other weapons in tow. It seemed like their intentions might have been more than just normal questioning with Willie, but they were planning something more serious. As Mr. Goff and his friends were on their way, Willie, who was still busy with his work at the dime store, got some unsettling news. A fellow employee informed him that 3 white men were heading to his house looking for him. This news got Willie seriously scared, especially since he knew his mom, Lula, was home alone, and he knew what those men could really do. So, without wasting a moment, he rushed back home to ensure his mother's safety. As soon as Willie got home, he quickly started telling his mother about the letter and everything that happened and why these men were coming to their house. But before he could finish, at around 10 a.m., those 3 men stormed into his house and started to forcefully pull him away. When Lula saw what was happening, she did everything she could to protect Willie, pleading with them to let him go. She cried, begged, and tried to reason, but Mr. Goff seemed totally consumed by anger and was unwilling to listen to anything. That's when things took a terrifying turn when Mr. Goff pulled out a pistol and aimed it at Lula's head. He demanded that she hand over Willie to them. Being terrified and caught in an impossible situation, Lula reluctantly let the men take Willie away. As the cars drove off with her son, Lula ran after them, crying and screaming for them to let him go. But they didn't stop. Now, after seeing no other way desperately, she rushed to the lumberyard where her husband James worked in hopes to share the dreadful news of Willie's abduction. However, fate had different plans. Before she could even reach there, Mr. Goff and his 2 companions showed up with guns in hand and ordered James to get into the car with them. Now, by the time Lula reached the lumberyard, it was too late. Those men had already taken her son and husband. But there, she met the lumberyard owner's wife, who spilled the details about everything that went down and how those 3 men took James with them. From there, the car drove out of town towards the Suwannee River, reaching a bluff in Sulphur Springs. Once they reached the high bank of the river, Mr. Goff had Willie and his father step out of the car. That's when he explained to James about everything Willie was accused of doing. James, even after knowing that his son was innocent and didn't do anything wrong, he felt utterly helpless in that heartbreaking moment. The 3 men tied up Willie's hands and feet, and he just stood there, watching helplessly. Then Mr. Goff took on the roles of both judge and jury, and asked Willie James if he grasped the so-called penalty for his crime, which, mind you, was just sending a letter to his daughter Cynthia. According to Mr. Goff, Willie committed a crime, and he wanted to make an example out of him so that no one else would even think of doing the same in the future. Being terrified, Willie tearfully replied, "Yes, sir," as he faced this bizarre trial, weeping all the while. Mr. Goff turned to James and asked if he had any words for his son. Powerless to change the course of his son's fate, James just shared some comforting words in what he realized were Willie's last moments. "Willie, I cannot do anything for you now. I'm glad I have belonged to the church and prayed for you." Both father and son had tears streaming down their faces. In a poignant final request, Willie asked his father to take his wallet. In a small yet significant exchange in the midst of this heart-wrenching ordeal. Then, without wasting a moment, Mr. Goff took out a gun and aimed it at Willie's head. He gave him a chilling ultimatum. Either jump into the water or face what was in the gun. Remember, Willie's hands and feet were still bound. He was gagged and forced into an impossible decision, where he had no other choice but to jump into the water and subjected himself to a horrific drowning death. Meanwhile, James, who was helpless, watched his son from a distance, ending his own life and meeting such a tragic end in front of his eyes. Even after doing this, the men seemed like they weren't satisfied. They took James back in the car and left him at the lumberyard, making sure he couldn't try to save his drowning son. Now, when James finished his work shift and returned home with a heavy heart, he had to deliver the devastating news to his wife, Lula. James sadly informed her that Willie wouldn't be coming home again. Even though Lula was somewhat prepared for the news, since she knew what the men had intended, but hearing it from James, she couldn't hold back her tears. It was a heartbreaking moment for the family. Now, if you think that's the end of the story, then hold on tight, because the story doesn't stop there. The white men went back to the Suwannee River, retrieved Willie's body, and buried him. But they weren't done. They crafted their own version of events, and here's where it gets really interesting. Mr. Goff, being a representative with some serious power, headed straight to Tom Henry, the sheriff of Suwannee County in 1944. There, the three men gave Sheriff Tom a written statement in which they shared their side of the story. According to them, they picked up Willie James from his house and brought him to his father James with the intention of having his father whip him over the letter. Further, they claimed that upon reaching the river, Willie actually resisted his father's attempt to discipline him. According to them, in his struggle to break free, Willie accidentally fell into the river and drowned himself. They insisted that they tried hard to rescue him, while his father supposedly stood by, doing nothing. It was a strategic move on their part, telling their version of events in advance because they knew that the sheriff would believe them more than the Howard family. It was done to secure their innocence and avoid being suspected of Willie's death. But the question was, even if Sheriff Tom decided to buy into the story that Willie drowned himself, why didn't he slap them with a kidnapping charge, even though they themselves had straight up admitted that they grabbed the boy from his house? Even back in Suwannee County in 1944, it was against the law to forcibly take a child from his mother. Yet, the white community seemed to swallow the story hook, line, and sinker. In their eyes, the African-American boy's demise was just a tragic accident. In reality, Willie was kidnapped, murdered, and buried within a mere 24 hours without leaving a proper grave marker. Sadly, Willie's case wasn't the only one, and he wasn't the only African-American boy to endure such cruelty. In August 1955, another tragic incident unfolded in Florida with Emmett Till, a 14-year-old African-American boy who faced lynching at the hands of 3 white men, all because he supposedly got physical with a white woman. Racism has been around for a long time, and unfortunately, it still exists in many parts of the world. Many cases of lynching have remained hidden, which never came to light, and the stories often go unheard. Willie's case would have also been one of those cases, and no one would have ever known until one day fate took a turn. Elbert C. Robinson, an African-American attorney from Live Oak, then in 1944 living in Washington, D.C., came home for the holidays. There he heard from the owner of the lumberyard about an African-American child being lynched, and he was so disturbed by this injustice that just 2 days after Willie's murder, on January 4, 1944, Robinson wrote a letter to the NAACP in Washington, D.C. Little did he know that this letter would set in motion the involvement of Thurgood Marshall, who in 1944 became the first African-American person to serve on the United States Supreme Court, ensuring Willie's story wouldn't be buried in silence. The letter dated January 4, 1944 stated, "While visiting in Florida during the Christmas holidays, one of the most gruesome cases imaginable was called to my attention. The people who relayed the facts in this case to me asked that I withhold their names, but implored me to get the facts in this case through to the NAACP as soon as possible. It appears that the conditions there are so tense that the colored people, high and low, are so frightened that they are afraid to have their names identified with cases of this type. After reading that impactful letter, Attorney Robinson not only shared the names of those he'd spoken to, Willie's father, James Howard, the African-American undertaker, Ansel Brown, Reverend R.M. Lane of Live Oak, and Mr. McPherson, the principal of Willie's school. But he also made a request to not publicize these names. Attorney Robinson's intervention actually sparked action into Willie's case. The NAACP sent letters to Florida Governor Holland, urging an investigation into Willie's killing. This move marked the first step toward justice for Willie. The governor also appointed Special Investigator David Lanier from Florida Law Enforcement Agency and instructed him to provide a discreet report on the matter. The wheels of justice started turning, albeit quietly. Investigator Lanier wasted no time and went straight to the heart of the matter, interviewing those involved in Willie's case. His interviews included Sheriff Tom, the three men implicated in Willie's death, James and Luna Howard. However, Luna, in her account to the special investigator, painted a vivid picture. On January 2, 1944, James had left for work at Bond Howell Lumber Company, where Mr. R.L. Howard was his boss. Later that morning, an automobile carrying 3 white men pulled up to my house. From that, 2 white men stood at the gate, in which one was named Mr. McCullough, and the identity of the other man remained unknown to me. The third man was Mr. Phil Goff. Suddenly, Willie walked into the house and Mr. Goff seized him, insisting him to come along. I frantically tried to pull Willie away, begging and asking what he had done. In the midst of this, Mr. Goff produced a revolver, pointing it at me. He forcibly dragged Willie to the car, joined by the other white men, and sped off towards Live Oak. I chased after the car, but it quickly got away from me. Once the interviews were done, Investigator Lanier was convinced that the 3 men were responsible for Willie's tragic end. In his report to the governor, David Lanier straightforwardly stated that the men were guilty of murder if they were guilty of anything. In response, on February 14, 1944, Governor Holland wrote to Thurgood Marshall, attaching a copy of Lanier's report. However, the governor also cautioned Marshall about the challenges ahead, emphasizing the difficulties when the testimony of 3 white men and the girl would likely stand against the account of 1 African-American man. Despite having all the information, fighting for this case remained an uphill battle. The pursuit of justice for Willie took an unexpected turn at the Sewanee Courthouse on May 4, 1944. The state's attorney brought the Howard killing before a grand jury, but things didn't unfold as anticipated. In a surprising twist, the only witness summoned was James Howard, who had relocated to Orlando by then. The grand jury just had 2 questions for him. How old was the boy? Did he personally deliver the letter to Cynthia Goff? Strangely, there were no inquiries about what transpired at the river. Lula Howard and other potential corroborating witnesses were not called. Even the special investigator Lanier was left out. After responding to the 2 questions, James Howard was dismissed from the grand jury proceedings and was left in the dark about any further developments. But why weren't there any questions about those white men? Why weren't there any questions about how Willie died? Why wasn't it important for the state's attorney? In a final push for justice, Harry T. Moore, the head of the state NAACP and a childhood classmate of Lula Howard, made a valiant effort.
Moore conducted his own investigation. He gathered affidavits from the Howard family. He organized an NAACP chapter in Live Oak, using the Howard lynching as his rallying cry.
Hailing from the same settlement outside Live Oak called Houston, Moore felt a personal connection to Willie's case. He teamed up with Marshall, and they both aimed to involve the federal authorities. But, despite the compelling arguments presented by Marshall and Moore, the state chose to remain silent, which only added another chapter to the sadly familiar narrative of justice eluding those who need it most.
He was going to the site of the lynching. He was finding the surviving family members, interviewing them, taking sworn affidavits, writing letters to the governor accusing white sheriffs of being implicated in the murder or of covering up the murder, and he just kept pushing it.
Following the lynching, Willie James' parents promptly relocated to Orlando, where James Howard passed away a few years later and Lula Howard lived until 2004. Mamie, Lula's sister, shared in a 2006 interview in Orlando that Lula's heart remained broken throughout her life. Willie was her only child and had left an indelible mark on her, a wound that time couldn't fully heal. Even after decades, some Caucasian individuals in Live Oak continue to cling to the drowning myth. In an interview on October 19, 2006, Susan K. Lamb, the editor of the Suwannee Democrat, the town's newspaper, adamantly stated, "It was not a lynching, it was a drowning." According to her, the boy was supposedly running away and met his demise in the river. When questioned about the practicality of running with bound hands and feet, her response was simply, "Isn't that interesting?" Willie James Howard was laid to rest in Live Oak's East Side Cemetery, resting in anonymity for over 60 years with no marker on his grave. It was finally in 2005 when Douglas Udell, a Suwannee County Commissioner and mortician, took the initiative. Having acquired the funeral home and records from Ansel Brown, who'd handled Willie James' burial, Commissioner Udell funded and arranged for a long overdue grave marker. Additionally, he organized a church service to honor Willie James, a poignant tribute that had been absent at the time of his tragic death. Now, Douglas Udell stands as a testament to the evolving landscape of African American political influence in Suwannee County, once among Florida's most conservative regions. Despite a district with a majority of white voters, Udell was elected chairman of the Suwannee County Commission in November 2007, showcasing a shift in the county's political dynamics. Also in 2006, Suwannee County Sheriff Tony Cameron demonstrated a rare commitment by attending the memorial service for Willie James, one of the few Caucasian people to do so. His presence spoke volumes, saying, "I thought I should be there." Sheriff Cameron's assistance extended to aiding Douglas Udell's research efforts. He reached out to Cynthia Goff's best friend from his office, revealing that Cynthia, although no longer residing in Live Oak, occasionally visits there. The friend shared that Cynthia was deeply distressed by Willie James' tragic fate, expressing, "She did not intend for that to happen. I think it stayed with her all of her life." Cynthia never married and spent her life working in downtown stores, including the Van Priest dime store. This incident had a profound impact on everyone involved and disrupted their lives permanently. During that period, racism deeply influenced society and created a stark division between African American and Caucasian people. Caucasians were often considered superior, while African Americans faced unjust perceptions of inferiority. Over time, society has evolved, and today, people from all backgrounds are treated with equal respect and offered opportunities regardless of their race. Presently, individuals of all races, including white people, embrace diversity and easily interact with one another. Yet some lingering perceptions suggest that Willie may have believed he could navigate a racially biased world, relying on charm, style, singing talent, and an unconventional job choice. The complexities of his motivations during those times continue to fuel discussions. It's hard to definitively say why Willie wrote the letter to Cynthia. Some might argue he wrote it out of pride in himself, believing he could break social barriers. On the other hand, it's also possible that Willie genuinely had feelings for Cynthia, hoping to build a connection despite the racial challenges of the time. The complexities of human emotions make it challenging to pinpoint a single motivation behind Willie's actions. The situation raised many questions about the role of fear, power dynamics, and societal pressures during those challenging times. The truth remains buried in traditional thinking, lingering racism, and the feeling of a justice that was never fully realized. So, we leave you with this. What are your thoughts on whether James truly chose not to save Willie, or if external factors hindered his ability to intervene? Additionally, considering the gravity of the situation, what punishment, in your opinion, would be fitting for the three men involved in taking Willie's life? We'd love to hear from you. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to drop your recommendations in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled for the next mystery to unfold.